to the All right. Thank you, Susan, and welcome everyone to the June
歡
meeting.
迎各
the
人
Land
參
Use
加
Committee.
今日嘅
Oh, we don't need to
土地使
start
用。
interpretation yet. I'm sorry.
OK，
So first order of business is why don't we take attendance? One moment. I just have this. All right. Jake Gold, present. Damaris Reyes. Absent. Ariadne Chua.
Present.
Thank you. Alistair Economicus.
Present.
Thank you. Andrea Gordillo.
Present.
Thank you. Herman Hewitt. Let's see, Herman, I'm going to check attendees. So that's where it was last time. No Herman. Trevor Holland. Laura Lugo. Sandra Strother, I believe I know is absent. Dominic Berg. Steve Herrick.
I'm present, and I noticed Trevor is present. He may have just been getting on audio when you called for him.
Yeah.
Oh, hi,
Yes,
Trevor.
Hi, I'm present. Sorry, on my phone as opposed to the computer.
No, don't worry about it. Thanks, Trevor, marking you present. Megan Joy. And I saw Megan was on here.
She is. Megan, you have to unmute yourself.
And Anisha Stephen, I know is going to be a little bit late. Okay, so first order of business, approval of last month's minutes. Are there any objections to
第一
approving?
就係要通過上一次
Nope, nope, we don't need to start yet. I'll let you
Okay.
folks know when it's time to start interpreting. I appreciate the proactivity though. Are there any objections to approving the minutes of last month? Hearing no objection, the minutes are approved. All right, moving on to the first agenda item for the lease at East Broadway Mall, 88 East Broadway. Kyle, who should I be making co-host here?
Oh, I will be presenting the item, and yeah, and then I think we'll need the interpreters
Fantastic.
enabled. Yeah.
So I will do that right now.
Okay, now. So am I ready to go ahead and share the presentation?
You can share the presentation. Give me one moment to get the interpreters ready.
Sure.
Okay, Jake, do you want to announce which agenda item this is?
Sorry, I think I did. The
Okay.
East Broadway
See,
Mall?
people are asking questions. That's what I was asking.
I see. Yes, this is 88 East Broadway Mall.
Okay, can everyone see the presentation?
If you could just give me one moment to
Oh,
finish
sure.
setting up interpreters. I'm
No
sorry.
sweat.
Yeah, one quick question. I seem to be not in the translation mode.
You will be in a moment.
I see. Okay.
Trust the process. All right, I've enabled interpretation mode if interpreters want to get themselves situated. All right, Kyle, I think you're probably good to go.
Great. Well, first, thanks for having us at this meeting of committee, Land Use Committee Board 3 in Manhattan. We're pleased to be here virtually, I guess. And so I'm just going to give a brief overview of the plan to revitalize East Broadway Mall. Following my presentation, there'll be a speaker from the organization that is proposed to take over operation of the mall. And then after that, we'll open it up for Q&A. So without further ado, let's begin. So first, just a brief introduction of the facility itself. It's located at 88 East Broadway in Chinatown, Manhattan. It's about 18,750 square feet within a C6 1G zoning district. The building is approximately 50,700 square feet, and there's a 2-story mall building at this location. Then some background on what has occurred here. There was a ULURP approval in 1979 for disposition. Following that was a public auction in 1984. The lease that was let from this auction commenced in 1985, and the successful bidder developed a mall on what was then vacant land. There was an amendment to the lease in 1995 due to some non-payment issues. And then in 2014, the operator defaulted on payment obligations. The city issued a notice of default in 2018, and then the operator filed for bankruptcy in 2019. So currently the mall is in a state of disrepair, and the current operator owes over $17 million to the city. So we have been working for several years to right the ship, as it were, and we'd like to explain how we hope to go about doing that. So the approval process for getting a new operator to take over the operation of the mall is as follows. There's I just want to say there's a number of players here. There's the bankruptcy court. There's the bank, which is the leasehold mortgagee that's loaned a lot of money to the current operator to operate the mall. And so they're all participants in this process. So consistent with the bankruptcy court's order to timely resolve this matter, the Bank of Hope, which is the leasehold mortgagee, they asked for best and final offers from potential operators. And the Bank of Hope submitted a plan to the bankruptcy court, which identified Broadway East Group as the operator with what they believe to be the best offer. And it will be a representative from Broadway East Group who will be presenting after myself. So this plan is subject to city and court approval. The court has indicated it does approve the plan, and DCAS, that's me, I'm representing DCAS. We're here to request a supportive resolution from the community board to bring to borough board, since this will require a borough board vote to modify the lease. And so upon borough board approval, DCAS will then seek a mayoral authorization to proceed with this. Some of the key lease terms are outlined here. We're looking to have a 20-year term plus a 10-year renewal option. This also includes a $5 million upfront investment to bring the mall up to code and to do many repairs that are needed for the building. There's protection for current subtenants and vendors at the mall. The new operator will pay a base rent plus full pilot, that's payment in lieu of taxes to the city. And there will also be a $2 million payment, lump sum payment to the city, which will take care of some of the arrears. Then a little bit about Broadway East Group. It's led by someone named Bill Lamb. He has a lot of experience in Chinatown commercial real estate projects, deep community roots here. He was a founding member of the Council for a Cleaner Chinatown, and he's supported by the Chinese Chamber of Commerce. And he has relevant expertise in construction, real estate, and property management. This shows the general timeline of the process. So today is the first step on the timeline where here we are at the committee meeting. So following this meeting, there's the full board meeting next week. And then by the end of September, we hope to bring this matter to the borough board. And following that, we'll have mayoral authorization. And the final step will be lease commencement. Right now, we're under what's known as Chapter 11 bankruptcy proceedings. If we don't get a supportive resolution for for this plan, we do run a risk of the bankruptcy judge shifting over to Chapter 7 bankruptcy proceedings, which could potentially entail the city and the community losing all control, and the bankruptcy court bringing in a bankruptcy trustee who the city would have no control over. That would be entirely up to the discretion of the courts. And so we hope to avoid that situation. Finally, we see the future state of the mall as a revitalized place that has it's stable for the existing small business tenants. We think it can be financially sustainable, brought up to code, and also a clean and attractive real asset for the community, and a real commercial hub here in Chinatown and East Broadway specifically. So once again, thank you for having us. And there'll be another presenter after myself, after which we'll open up for questions. Thanks again.
Thank you, Kyle. So I guess the next presenter is Bill Lamb.
Yeah, I believe it's Kevin, is that correct?
Kevin Kong, yeah, will be speaking on our behalf for Broadway East Group.
All right, thank you.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Great, I'm going to share my screen with my presentation. It says I'm not able to share my, okay, I see now. All right. So good evening, everyone. My name is Kevin Kong. I'm the Executive Director of Broadway East Group, and I will be presenting our proposed plans for the revitalization of 88 East Broadway. Thank you, Community Board 3 and the Department of Citywide Administrative Services for making time for us on the agenda today. Broadway East Group was identified as the operator with the best offer and selected to move forward with the city's approval process. The current state of the mall is what some may describe as urban blight. There's deterioration and disrepair due to neglect. Broadway East Group has committed to repositioning the mall and bringing life back into this 50,000 square foot space for the benefit of the community. Our leadership team are locals and small business owners who have a unique insight into how to bring life back into this East Broadway corridor. The team has decades of experience in commercial real estate development, construction, property management, and community relations. In our community outreach initiatives, a key topic revolved around improving the safety of the neighborhood. We were asked to increase lighting around the mall to create a safe and welcoming environment. This was an important part of the proposed design, which incorporates a new digital LED facade. Calls to improve access and visibility is what prompted the relocation of the main entrance of the mall to 4th Street, as you can see in the rendering. We are targeting a construction timeline of 16 months or less from the lease effective date. Our group bid $4 million for the opportunity and further committed to revitalizing the mall via an additional $5 million in minimum upfront investment. For architectural and engineering services, we retained award-winning architect Raymond Chan. The proposed plan places a food hall in the basement level with over 20 stalls. The ground level is designed with 28 retail stores of various sizes. The second level will have a large restaurant anchor that upon completion is projected to be the largest restaurant in Chinatown with a capacity for 800 people. And the restaurant will be serving dim sum, dinner, and also be able to host large-scale banquets and events. We anticipate this project will create 300 direct jobs with secondary impacts and attract thousands of daily foot traffic into the corridor. I already spoke about the new exterior facade and mall entrance. The interior will be completely overhauled to improve access and traffic flow with a new elevator and escalators to each floor, all electrical, plumbing, HVAC, fire alarms, sprinkler systems will be upgraded and brought up to code. Broadway East Group is committed to support the local labor, especially those from an immigrant background who have lost work during the pandemic. We are committed to a fair living wage and will work with all operators to make such a commitment. We plan to partner with local social service agencies with worker training programs such as the Chinatown Manpower Project and CPC. The interior spaces we designed with the functionality to host community events in partnership with local nonprofits. We look to further extend our reach by partnering with Chinatown Partnership and the Business Improvement District to host street and corridor-based community events. We covered a bit about the leadership, so in the interest of time, I'm going to skip over some of the details. We have been very fortunate for the overwhelming support from the local community organizations such as the Chinese Chamber of Commerce for their leadership in engaging us with the community and helping us gain valuable feedback on what the community needs. We have received 18 letters of support, which we've submitted. These letters of support are from local leaders and organizations, and many of them are here present on the call to speak in support of our proposed plan. I know we won't be able to hear from all of them, but on behalf of Broadway East Group, thank you for being here today. I'm going to hand this back to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, Kyle, do we have anyone else presenting?
That should be it.
All right, so I'm going to first turn it to the committee for questions, and then we will go to members of the public. Members of the public, we have a really busy agenda today. So I'm going to be pretty strict in enforcing a 1-minute limit on comments for all presentations going on today. So for this, for the 2 land use matters coming up later, 1 minute. I'm sorry about it. I don't relish it. But we got to get through. So members of the committee, questions, comments? Alistair, go ahead.
Thanks. Kyle and Kevin, thank you. I have a few questions. How did the previous tenant end up owing $17 million? And what's the current rent that the current tenant's paying? It would seem that that would be a few years worth of rent at the least. So I'm just curious how that amount of debt formed over the years. And my other question for Kevin is the facade with the lighting. Is that going to be a billboard with advertisement as well, or is that just purely lighting for the surrounding area? Thank you. Those are my questions.
And Kevin, when you answer that question, would you mind putting back up on the screen the screenshot of the facade? Thank you.
No problem.
Sure. Well, to answer about the $17 million, some of that, a lot of that is actually late fees that contribute to that, as well as pilot is also due, the payment in lieu of taxes. But let me just hold on. Let me get the current rent that's the monthly rent that's supposed to be paid. It hasn't. Well, yeah. But let me just look that up really quick. But I guess, yeah, while I'm grabbing that, I don't know, Kevin, if you want to speak to the question about the facade.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen again. So I do want to say this is an initial rendering. We have some changes in process, so this may change slightly over time. To answer your question about whether or not there'll be advertising here, I mean, we haven't discussed whether or not we will include advertising, but I imagine if we did, it would be limited as to not create a disruption to the community. So anything that we do with the screens obviously will be tasteful and respectable.
Thanks.
All right, Andrea, go ahead.
Thank you. And thanks all for coming. I just have a couple of quick questions. One is clarifying, I may have missed this. Just wondering who determines the applicant as the best operator, and what are the criteria? Was it DCAS or EDC? And then if East Broadway Group could just talk a little bit more about community engagement, like who were kind of some of the stakeholders, what did that look like? Just out of curiosity and more information. Thanks.
Sure. So it was the Bank of Hope that was the entity that selects what they consider to be the best offer. They have that right under the lease as the leasehold mortgagee. They're the ones that originally lent the money to develop them all back in back when it got developed. Yeah.
I guess my second question was directed more to Kevin about the community engagement process. If you could kind of tell us a little bit about, who were stakeholders that were involved, and what sort of shaped this vision?
Sure. Like I mentioned in my presentation, we're very thankful for the Chinese Chamber of Commerce, who we've connected with on numerous occasions to further connect to the broader local community organizations. And a lot of the discussions went revolved around what the needs of the communities were, what the wants were, what this space is best utilized for, and what we can do to further engage the community via this project. Regarding the people that we spoke with, I mean, many of them are reflected in the supporting letters that we've received, which we've submitted. The Chinese Consolidated Benevolent Association is a group that provided significant feedback. We also spoke with the Confucius Plaza Association, which hosts 400 families right across the street from us. And so that was an important part of the feedback that we received. And various family associations and other charitable associations, nonprofits from the community, all listed in the supporting letters of support. Thank you.
All right, any other members of the committee have questions?
Sorry, Kyle, any news on the rent or the rent per square foot? Some figure?
Yeah, sorry, I'm just having trouble finding it in the files. But I as soon as I get it, I'll
Okay, thanks.
I'll pull it for you guys. Yep.
All right, so now we're going to turn it over to members of the public. I'm going to promote you one at a time to ask your questions, make your comments. I will cut you off after 1 minute. Again, apologies. It's not personal. I would also encourage while we're here, future prospective members of the committee, new appointees to CB3. I see some of you in the attendees list. Please speak. It is possible you'll be joining the committee soon, and we'd love to hear from you. So feel free to act as a member of the public here. So first I'll be promoting Catherine Walpe. And Catherine, I think you need to accept my promotion to panelist. Catherine declined to be promoted to panelist. Okay, I'll move on to Wade. Wade, I'm going to promote you to panelist. You have to accept.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So this is Wei Li from the Chinese Chamber of Commerce. I think we are the community partner for the project. So we are so excited to see the group coming to revitalize our community and our neighborhood. So I have been reaching out to many organizations in the area, and they were so excited to see the project going to happen too. So I'm here to support and to representing hundreds of members in our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wade. I'm going to send you back to the attendees. All right. Next up, I'm going to promote Carlin Chan to panelist. Carlin, make sure you accept. All right, Carlin, go ahead. Carlin, I think you might have to unmute yourself. We can't hear you.
Oh man, I wasted all that. Okay, I'm here to support the application of Broadway East Group for assignment of the lease. I've seen that area grow from a commercial parking lot for trucks to the mall being built in the 80s. And when the mall was built, it would revitalize that whole area and also brought many residents into that area. But sadly, in the last 10 years or so, it's really fallen on hard times. And since it's stuck in bankruptcy court, if we don't act now to keep this asset in the community, we may lose it to a mall or to a generic box store, Amazon for instance. All right, thank you.
All right, thank you, Carlin. I'm going to send you back to attendees. Nancy Kong, I'm promoting you to panelist. Make sure you accept.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Jake. And I grew up in the area, so 2 blocks away, so I'm very familiar with the area, the mall and the demise. So my question's really focused in on ensuring that it's a sustainable plan for both the neighborhood as well as the city. So I think I have a few questions, Kevin, for you, if you could help answer. One is, do you have an estimate of what the renovations will cost? And is there enough cash on hand to make sure that the renovations are completed and not sort of stopped halfway? In terms of the second question, in terms of the digital lighting, I would really encourage you to engage with the community. And if it's potentially art related, again, local artists would be amazing to have art installations there. The third question is, in terms of the rent, I also want to ask, how can we be assured that the rent that you will charge for the local vendors will be something that is obviously sustainable for you to pay the city, but also would encourage our local businesses and not displace them. And I had one more question in terms of just last question, the business plan, like who has vetted to make sure that the revenue streams will be enough to afford the rent, which I Cass, you're going to supply that to us. But I just want to make sure somebody has vetted that, and that's, I don't know if it's the bank. Thank you very much, Jake.
Thank you, Nancy. I think Kyle and Kevin, if you could answer those questions, that would be much appreciated.
Do you want to go first?
Sure. I mean, I can just speak to the Alistair, to go back to that. We got the number. The current rent is about $62,000 per month, and then there's also about $58,000 in pilot. Those are monthly values, and then well, it was actually posted on the CB3 website. The proposed rent for the, under this new deal is, it's an annual number. It's $450,000 per year. Let me just divide that by 12. So that's about $37,500 per month would be the new proposed rent.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
So Kevin, on to you.
Got it. Nancy, thank you for the questions. I'll start with the first one regarding the cost. Like we mentioned earlier, our commitment is to invest an additional $5 million into the project. So right now, our budget cost numbers revolve around that $5 million number. The second question regarding the digital lighting, again, I mentioned earlier that this is just an initial draft, and there's actually a revision that's in place that I'm not able to share yet, but it will showcase better what the theme behind the LED screens would be. And a great suggestion regarding local artists that also came up in one of our community engagement discussions. It's definitely something that we are looking into, and would like to be able to showcase the talent in the community. Question number 3 regarding rent, and I guess combined with question number 4 regarding the business plan. Yes, obviously there are very complicated, and well, there are a significant amount of analysts working on the rent cash flow calculations to make sure that we can reach our goal and be sustainable. Obviously, sustainability is a big priority. For the amount of money that we are planning to invest into this project, we have to make sure that the rents would be affordable so that we can maintain occupancy, and at the same time be able to support our business. So to answer your question, yes, this is being looked at very carefully. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. There was a second part to my question. I'll be real quick. My concern is also to maintain the local vendors that are obviously in our area versus bringing in high-end vendors. So I was just asking, like, where are you leaning, and just to make sure that there is a place for our local vendors, because again, that is such a central area and the community actually uses it and relies on those local vendors.
See, thank you. With regard to our commitment to local vendors, we've actually committed with DCAS to maintain, I believe the number is 14 tenants that are currently in place in the building. And, we've reinforced our commitment to allowing them to remain as tenants, and giving them opportunities to expand their business and become sustainable tenants in our building. Thank you.
All right, Nancy, I'm going to kick you back to attendees. Maybe we'll see you in the panelists next month. And I'm going to let Megan Joy cut the line here because she's a committee member. Megan, go ahead.
All right, thanks, Jake. I just, that was my question, whether the current retail tenants who were in good standing with their rent were given the opportunity to stay on in the new project. And my second question was, how many square feet is the whole space? There's a 800 capacity event space and the food hall and retail space. So what's because $37,000 a month rent doesn't seem, it seems like nothing for a space that big.
Sure. Yeah, the space is approximately 50,000. Let me get the exact number. 50,706 square feet. That's the according to public records. That's the size of the mall. And the rent. All I can really say is that the Bank of Hope, the leasehold mortgagee, vetted all the proposals that received, and it determined this was the best one. And so it's, yeah, I couldn't really say if the rent potentially could be higher, I suppose, but I decided this was the best deal that was available. And then in terms of the vendors staying, part of the current plan gives them a minimum of 2 years of protection in terms of staying at the mall at their current lease terms. And we feel that's like a great benefit for the local community and for the vendors.
And thank you, Megan. Do you still have questions?
Nope, thank you.
All right. I'm going to promote Mike Schweissenberg to panelist. Mike, keep an eye out for a promotion notification. Here he comes.
Howdy. Thanks for accepting me. My name is Mike Schweinsberg, and I'm the president of the 504 Democratic Club, one of only 3 major citywide clubs, and at 40 years old, the nation's first and largest advocating for the civil rights of people with disabilities. So you might anticipate my questions. There are 2. 1, as we are the largest minority and over 25% of the Asian community identify as being people with disabilities, can you please confirm that all floors and the basement, restrooms, etc., are fully accessible? And anticipating that you will answer yes and comply with the ADA, can you please outline what your outreach to the disability community is as regards hiring?
Let's see. Go ahead, Kevin. Yeah.
Thank you for your question. To answer your question regarding ADA accessibility, again, we've committed to bringing the building up to code, and all the accessibility requirements will be met per the architect's guidelines. So yes, the answer to that is yes.
Okay.
And in terms of speaking with groups regarding hiring for people with disabilities, that's going to be something on our agenda, and that's something that we will have to visit. Thank you.
All right.
Please feel free to reach out to me, and I will provide whatever guidance I can to extend your outreach. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mike.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mike. I'm sending you back to attendees. All right. Next up, Michelle Wang. Michelle, keep an eye out for the promotion dialog box. Here she comes. All right, Michelle, you can go ahead. Michelle, I think you might be muted. Well, not I think, I know. I know that you're muted.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay, hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Wan, the president of Asian Pacific Island American Public Affairs and New York chapter. We all know 88 East Broadway is very important to local business and the economy. And it's more important. It's very important this time to select the right person, to operate this entity. So the same mistake won't be made again, being bankrupt. So I am one of the supporter of this selected group because I know them for over a decade. They have a track of record, being successful in business and giving back to the community. Many people sitting on this project, right? Not only, are a successful business person, they have been made great contribution to the community, from senior to the youth, all sort of program, and they are there. So we are very confident, and they
Michelle,
will.
I'm so sorry to cut you off. I'm sure we appreciate your comments. It's just we have to keep this to under a minute, but thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Michelle, I'm going to send you back to attendees, and I'm going to give Catherine Wilby one more opportunity to accept my promotion. Catherine, if you do not want to speak to this item, if you could lower your hand, please. Otherwise, I can lower it for you. That sounded unduly threatening. It's just clicking a button. All right, folks, it sounds like we have heard from the public. So now it's time to get a resolution going. I have a resolution that was sent to us by DCAS that I made a handful of light technical changes to. I'm going to share my screen now. Can anyone not read this?
Looks good.
Is that a trick question?
I just want to make sure that I'm not hurting anyone's ability to read. I can zoom in and scroll if you'd like, but this gets it all on one page. All right. Do I have a motion to support this resolution?
Jake, I got a question.
Yeah, Megan, go ahead.
It says the lease with BEG LLC will also require that all existing subtenants be allowed to remain in the mall under their respective sublease terms for a 5-year period. Didn't Kevin say it was a 2-year period?
Yeah, Kyle, I'm sorry. This was the resolution that we had for the last meeting. You guys were supposed to be at like February. Is it 2 years?
It is 2
It's 2
years. That's
years.
right. Yeah.
All right. Apologies. Megan, thank you for the correction. All right. So do we have a motion to just get this on the table so that we can amend it?
Yeah, I'll do a motion to approve.
Thank you, Megan. Do we have a second?
Second it.
All right, so we have the resolution in front of us. Let's hear a discussion. What do people think? Raise your hands. Alistair, go ahead. You're muted, Alistair. Alistair, you're muted. We can't hear you.
Thank you. I'm sorry about that. I'll support the resolution. I just for the record, I think it's a really good deal. At $9 a square foot, that's about what it comes out to on the rent side. So they should be successful because that's, from what I know, a pretty low rent. But it was out to market, so it is what it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Alistair. Do we have any other comments, suggested amendments? Look, hearing none, I want to say for the record, I will also be supporting this. I do have pretty substantial concerns. I know that nobody here is responsible for this, but the way that we came here, the path that we got here was that the original lease for this space had a pilot payment of around $42,000, and it was crafted in a pretty predatory way. The last time I checked, I read an article about this, I think in Curbed, where the pilots are now like $1.2 million. And given all of the crises that have faced Chinatown in the last 2 decades, I don't think that it's any wonder that the current operator found themselves in arrears, right? I think that that was something that the city did, if not intentionally, with reckless disregard for how it would end up. And so this is a good deal. And I think that this plot of land needs to be redeveloped and needs to be brought up to code, and it'll be great for the community. But I really hope that one lesson that we can learn from this is that we don't do that again, that we don't get into leases where that sort of thing happens again, and that we don't kind of take this as bailing out the predatory decisions of our city's past. Sorry to soapbox. This whole thing has been a little upsetting to me to follow. Herman, go ahead.
Actually, I have voted on this at the beginning, and I understand what you're talking about. And even then, a lot of people question whether what was charged was reasonable. Even back in those days, I remember the conversations that were going on during that development. The only thing I think about this mall, and I've visited all these years and have dim sum and bought things there, is that I always want to know that the promotion of this place goes beyond Chinatown. And we like to talk about thing that benefits the community. What benefits the community is that we don't rely on the people that live in the community solely to support what we develop from time to time. And I hope that would be looked at really, because some of the things that were sold in that building, they're from small merchants and stuff. But I've noticed that, and I've talked to a lot of people there, is that some of those things that were sold in there could not earn enough income for the people who were doing those business in order sufficiently to pay the operators rent at all. I mean, most of those people, the small business that sell cards and stuff like that, could not earn enough. So my understanding that the operator could not collect or raise the rents on those existing tenants. And I was wondering, when somebody was saying right now that it has to be affordable, we also have to realize that as time goes by, the person who is investing all this money is going to need to look around and say, I have to increase the rents on what was affordable to a higher amount so that he could maintain that business with the city. And I hope, like I said, 2 things is we have to understand that whoever subleases spaces have to pay a reasonable rent. And two, this business should be promoted not only in Chinatown, but outside of Chinatown, either to bring people to support the business that is located there.
All right, thank you, Herman. Appreciate it. All right, so if I am not hearing anything else, I am going to propose an amendment that goes something like this. So it reads, therefore be it resolved, CB3 supports the above described lease for the East Broadway Mall, which will bring in a new operator to improve the building while protecting existing businesses that operate there. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. To adopt the amendment, I think we can go by unanimous consent. Are there any objections to adopting the amendment? All right, hearing none, the amendment is adopted. All right, and someone's gonna have to remind me, I'm terribly sorry. I keep forgetting this. Can we adopt the resolution by unanimous consent? Do we need to do a roll call vote?
We need to do a roll call.
All right, let's do a roll call vote. Andrea, could you call it? Do you have the minutes open?
Yes, give me 1 second. Okay, sorry, give me 1 moment. Okay. Jake Gold,
Yes.
Damaris Reyes,
Yes.
Ariana Chua,
Yes.
Alistair Economakis,
Yes.
Andrea Gordillo, yes. Herman Hewitt,
Yes.
Trevor Holland,
Yes.
Laura Lugo, present. Sandra Struther, Dominic Berg, Steve Herrick,
Yes.
sorry, Megan Joy,
Yes.
Anisha Steven. Okay, thank you. That's it.
All right, it sounds like the resolution has carried. Thank you all for your participation. And I'm going to now disable interpretation and we can let everyone here for this agenda item be excused. So thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, interpreters, you should be relieved of your interpretation ability. So moving on, the next item we have is the East 5th Street redevelopment. I've gotten a couple of questions when that will be. That is now. Who do we have here to present for the East 5th Street development?
I'll be one of the presenters. So will Val Orselli, who's the project manager for the This Land Is Our CLT, and Ashwin. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the pronunciation of his last name. From the 6th Street Community Center will also be presenting.
And Ashwin will just be presenting for the 6th Street one, correct?
Yeah, when we did this slideshow presentation, we do it where we're talking about both sites because there's overlap in terms of talking about the CLT model. But so I'd like to just go through the presentation, I think, and then we can sort of have the questions first address one side and then the other, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good idea. So why don't we do that? We're going to take up both agenda items at the same time. We will go through them. When we get to the resolution, we'll take questions and comments in order. So we'll do 5th Street and then we'll do a resolution, then we'll do 6th Street and then we'll do a resolution. Steve, who should I make a co-host here?
Yeah, I'll be sharing the screen. So.
All right, go nuts.
Okay. Okay, I'm trying to figure out why I can't find my my presentation here. Let's see. I guess, let me see. Let me know if this is it. Ah. Sorry, I'm on a Mac computer and I don't know. I'm not sure why it's not letting me do this. Perhaps.
You want, Steve, do you want me to share?
Yeah, perhaps you should do it. I'm sorry.
1 second.
All right, Ashwin, I've made you a co-host so you can share your screen.
Okay. All right, just getting it open. Okay, can everybody see this?
Great.
Yes, please go ahead.
Fantastic.
Okay, I think we can get started.
Go ahead, Val.
Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the Land Use, Housing and Zoning Committee. For this opportunity to present this proposal that we have to develop low-income housing on 2 city-owned parking lots. And as Steve Herrick mentioned, there'll be several other presenters besides me, Steve Herrick, Ashwin Rastogi, and also Howard Brandstein. Just to get started, I'd like to start with a statement of purpose. The Cooper Square Committee and This Land Is Ours and 6th Street Community Center are requesting support of CB3 for a COT pilot program to ensure that permanently affordable low-income housing is developed on 2 city-owned sites. Affordable and also accessible, I must add. We also seek site control for This Land Is Ours and its partners on each site so we can develop approximately 130 permanently affordable low-income housing units on them. Currently, the 2 city-owned parking lots are used as follows. 326 East 5th Street is across the street from the NYPD 9th Precinct. And it's a parking lot owned by the New York City Department of General Services and provides 48 parking spaces for NYPD employees. 642, 648 East 6th Street, next door to the 6th Street Community Center, between avenues A, B, and C, is a NYCHA-owned parking lot and provides parking spaces for about 5 NYCHA employee cars and houses a dumpster used by LES2 NYCHA project. It also contains a storage shed. Briefly, I want to give a description of Community Land Trust, although I'm sure you're familiar with it. Community Land Trusts are nonprofit organizations that acquire and manage land in order to develop permanently affordable homes. COTs accomplish this by acquiring properties, then conveying the improvements and leasing the land to building owners to sell or rent their homes to low moderate income families at below market rates. And of course, COTs are not limited to housing. They could be a community center, it could be an open space, but our focus is on housing. This Land Is Ours CLT was formed in 2019, one of more than 15 formed in New York City in recent years with the help of NYSERD, the New York City Community Land Initiative. This Land Is Ours comprised of housing activists, community organizers, and area residents. It seeks to acquire underutilized buildings, troubled HDFCs, or privately owned or publicly owned land in order to build and preserve affordable housing and prevent displacement and preserve communities. Using this community-controlled model, This Land Is Ours is also committed to ensuring that low-income communities and are stewards of land, housing, economic development, and other essential resources. I also wish to note that CB3 in their FY 2024 community needs prioritize disposition of city-owned land to CLTs and to develop senior and supportive housing and family housing as much as possible. And here I'd like to turn the presentation over to Steve Herrick to talk about the Fifth Street site. Thank you, Steve.
Okay, all right. So the East Fifth Street site is at 326-332 East Fifth Street. It is the NYPD parking lot. It's between 2nd and 1st Avenue. It currently holds 48 cars for NYPD employees. Most of the cars in the lot are private vehicles, although you can see there are occasionally some police vehicles there. This site actually was designated as an affordable housing site in 2021. I'll talk more about that later. The site is roughly 13,500 square feet. It's in an R8B zone, which has a 4.0 FAR. So the allowable gross zoning square footage is 54,000 square feet for residential development. Based on the dwelling unit factor of 680 square feet, it can hold 76 ADA compliant senior housing units as of right. Next slide. Why build low-income accessible senior housing? I think the answer is kind of obvious. The city has a severe housing shortage, especially for seniors. There's, according to the recent census, is 1.76 million senior citizens ages 60 and up in New York. And that's an increase of over 500,000 since the year 2000. Where the senior population in New York now is almost 21%. It's expected to grow by another 100,000 seniors by 2040. About 18% of New York City seniors live in poverty. For a single person, that's less than $12,261 per year. For a family of two, I believe it's about $15,500. More than 110,000 seniors in New York City are on affordable housing waiting lists. And also 35% of seniors have some level of disability. And these photos of just, pictures of seniors just walking out one day on the street near the site. You could just see people with canes. There were some people in wheelchairs as well. Next slide. So other aspects of this plan is that we would basically, Cooper Square Committee and This Land Is Ours CLT would seek to do a joint venture with a minority business enterprise or a women business enterprise to develop the site. We would seek out service provider to manage the building and provide services to senior residents. So it would be an entity that's qualified to operate that kind of housing. The site would have a large community room on the ground floor. The buildings would have a footprint of about 7,500 square feet. So we assume that there would be at least, 2,500, 3,000 square feet of community space in the building for residents. We would also have open space landscaped in the rear yard of about 4,000 square feet. There's potential that we could have a green roof on the building as we work with an architect to design it. So these are items that would be part of a community planning process. We would do design charrettes with the surrounding community to get an idea of what people would like to see in terms of building design. But this is a building that would be no more than 75 feet tall under the existing zoning. So basically a 7-story building. We would also engage in discussions with the city about funding the cost of relocating the parking lot below ground so that the police are forced to park elsewhere in the neighborhood. Next slide. I think I'm going to pass it over now to Ashwin to talk about the 6th Street site.
Yep. Hey, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so the other site is on 642 to 648 East Sixth Street. This is currently a NYCHA parking lot. The lot is 106 feet wide by 97 feet deep, and is in an R8B zone, so same as the previous Fifth Street site. The Sixth Street Community Center owns the adjacent site and would be a partner on the project. Sixth Street Community Center can transfer 3,300 square feet of air rights to enlarge the building by about 5 units. And with the air rights, the allowable zoning square footage would be around 44,400 square feet. Again, using the same dwelling unit factor of 680 square feet, that would be 65 units in the building. However, we do want to make this oriented towards families, so we would have more 2 and 3 bedroom units. So we're expecting slightly less than 60 units. And we have a picture here just of the sort of current utilization of the lot. It's a NYCHA parking lot. It's usually only occupied by a few cars, and it has a semi-permanent storage unit and dumpster also on the site. So some additional aspects of the plan, we want to bring out the community organizing aspects of community land trust very much with this site. So the new building is expected to have 7,000 square feet of ground floor space. We are looking to collaborate with residents and community members to utilize at least some portion of that space for community programs. So Sixth Street Community Center next door already provides an array of services, including food distributions and youth programming. And, we're looking forward to working with the community to vision what additional, programs would be relevant and useful, and bring, our knowledge and expertise in those areas, to help realize that. So some ideas that have come up, one is a CSA oriented food co-op and food pantry. So again, Sixth Street has been, really deeply involved in food justice work in the community. So, we're happy to lend our expertise there. And again, work with the community to understand what shape those programs should take to make sure that they're actually meeting the needs of the community in that neighborhood. The other idea that we have and, have talked to community members about is having a housing activism hub to try to bring together NYCHA and CLT residents and try to build CLTs into a broader housing movement that brings in, other low-income residents, NYCHA residents, Section 8 residents, people who are on all spectrums of low-income housing to work together to protect the neighborhood and make sure, there are investments in housing for working class people. With that, I think
I think I'll do the next slide.
Yeah.
Okay. So just to give some background about these sites, Cooper Square Committee and This Land is Our CLT and the Sixth Street Community Center have been reaching out to the local communities. We've been doing that for both sites to try to make people more aware of our plans and our visions for the sites and to just engage them in the process. So initially with the 6th and 5th Street site, we had a meeting with HPD, NYCHA, and the mayor's office back in February of 2021. And we presented our proposals for both sites. At that time, of course, it was coming towards the end of the de Blasio administration, but they basically said they wanted to do a deeper dive into the zoning, and then they would get back to us with more questions. But then the clock really ran out on that administration, so that didn't really move forward. But since then, we have gathered hundreds of petitions for both sites. We've got close to 1,000 signatures on petitions for the East 6th Street site, including over 100 signatures from residents of LES2, which is really, I think this land was really initially designated for LES2. So we definitely want to have the buy-in of the residents there for this site. We also gave a presentation to the tenants of LES2 and the larger community at 6th Street back in the fall of 21. And we did another presentation at La Plaza Cultural in the fall of 2022, talking about both sites. And I think we had about 70 people in attendance at that meeting. We've also met with the leadership of LES2 Tenant Association, which was convened at Harvey Epstein's office late last year and earlier this year. We put together a memo of understanding based on input from the tenant leaders. And basically, it met with the approval of Harvey Epstein after we kind of reworked it a couple of times. So that's basically where we're at with both these sites. The Fifth Street site, like I said, I think we have collected over 600 signatures on petitions from local residents, near the site. And we've also done, we just recently did a walk from the Service Center with seniors down to the Fifth Street site with Carlina Rivera. And she was one of the speakers at that rally. And again, she was instrumental in getting that site designated for affordable housing as part of the Soho NoHo rezoning back in 2021. That was one of the community benefits that she negotiated with the de Blasio administration. I'll pass it on to Val now to talk about our request.
Val, you're muted.
Muted?
Again. Our request is as follows. This land is ours, COT, Cooper Square Committee, and the Sixth Street Community Center request the CB3 pass 2 separate resolutions, one for each site, supporting our efforts to get the city of New York to do the following. For the East Fifth Street site, implement the community benefits agreement that Councilmember Carlina Rivera negotiated in December 2021 as part of the Soho NoHo rezoning district, when the city agreed to designate the NYPD parking lot as affordable housing and to transfer to HPD to handle this position. Secondly, create a pilot COT project that would bypass the RFP process and provide site control of the East Fifth Street site to this land is our COT and Cooper Square Committee so we can start the pre-development process and secure the financing to develop senior housing. For the East Sixth Street site, we like to have the CB3 urge NYCHA to work with HUD to start the disposition process. The public housing property is provided under Section 18 of the U.S. Housing Act, which requires extensive consultation with the affected resident associations, local community and elected officials. And 2, place the site in a pilot COT project will bypass the RP process and provide site control to this land is ours COT, Cooper Square Committee and Sixth Street Community Center, so we can start working on securing financing for development of the housing. Those are the 2 resolutions we're requesting for CB3. I'd like to turn this back over to Steve.
Yeah, so if we get support for our efforts and are able to get site control, our organizations would begin doing the pre-development work. We'd create a development team that includes an MBE or WBE as part of a joint venture for the sites, and we'd retain an architect, expediter, legal counsel, and other consultants. For the Sixth Street site, we would work to secure HUD's approval of the sale of the NYCHA site under Section 18 of the U.S. Housing Act of 1937. For the Sixth Street site, we'll pursue financing such as 9% low-income housing tax credit funding and other sources such as Reso A funding. For the East Fifth Street site, we'll pursue senior housing financing from HPD through the SARA program, as well as 4% low-income housing tax credits, HDC bond financing, and other sources. For both sites, we will engage local stakeholders in meetings to discuss the development program, the population served, and incorporate community input in the building design, unit mix, and community programs being offered. And that's the conclusion of our presentation, so we will take questions.
All right, thank you all for that incredibly in-depth presentation. The way we're going to do this is like the last one. I'm going to take questions from the committee. If you raise your hand, if you have questions for these 3 presenters, and then we will take questions and comments from members of the public. Please raise your hand. Members of the committee, please be mindful of the time. I won't cut you off. Members of the public, I'm terribly sorry. You've got a minute. All right, Alistair, go ahead. You're muted, Alistair. Alistair, you're still muted. We can't hear you.
I'm sorry about that. It's twice now. I'll try not to make it a 3rd time. Steve, hi, and thank you. A few questions. Could you explain what the alternatives would be to this project if you were not involved? For example, would the city sell it? It would either stay, I assume it would either stay the same as parking, or the city would sell it to a private developer, right? And then the city would take X amount of dollars from the sale. I'm assuming you're not planning to pay for the property, which is fine. I just want to know what the alternatives are. So if it went to a private developer, the city would get the revenue from the sale. And then on a go-forward basis, what about the real estate taxes on the land? Is that something that's sealed, that you guys are exempt from, or would you guys be paying the real estate taxes to the city to provide a revenue stream to them? So it's difficult for me to look at this because I have no other options to say, okay, if it wasn't with you guys, these would be the other options that exist. And my other comment is on the parking. Parking is extremely tough in this neighborhood. You're not going to find parking in an underground area that's going to house the cars for the police department. It's non-existent. It's extremely competitive at the moment. I would propose, if you went ahead and developed this, put the parking underneath the building that you're going to build. It's going to cost more.
That's what I'm saying. That's what we're proposing. Yes, we're saying it would be below ground. We would build it below ground.
So you would
So
build
they
it
would
rather
be
than-
during construction. They would temporarily be displaced, and plans would have to be made. Maybe they could lease some space from the nearby
Sure.
Mitchellama buildings or some other sites. I don't know.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, that's what I was going to suggest. And can you fit all that parking on one floor underneath, or would it be? I assume it would probably be 2 or 1 plus.
You know, we would have to look at that. We'd have to look at the cost of doing that excavation. Also, as part of your geotechnical studies, you have to see if there are underground streams or if there are certain challenges in terms of, installing vapor barriers to prevent, constant flooding. But certainly one level can be done underneath, and there may be a loss of some parking spaces, but I don't know if all those cars that are there now are used every day, or if some of them are long-term parking. We need to have discussions about that with the city.
Got it. Okay. If you could answer the
Sure.
questions.
The other question, basically, I mean, if we don't develop these sites, I mean, they're likely to sit for a long time with no disposition plans, I assume, since they have sat in their current state for a very long time. But given this, seriousness of the housing crisis, we are looking for, and this neighborhood now has very few city-owned, land available at this point. There's virtually no HPD-owned land. So we're looking at other sites that, this is Department of General Services, I believe, owns the Fifth Street site based on the Pluto data. I couldn't even find the data in Acris, but and then the other site is NYCHA. So so I think the city, I doubt the city would be able to just sell these for market value. It would have to go through a ULURP process, and I seriously doubt a council member, certainly the current council member, would not support such a sale. So I think the main, and the community board's priority is development of sites for affordable housing. So we are proposing to be able to do that, and we're confident that we could bring in a partner that has a solid track record who could help us to do a joint venture on these. And we would be buying them for $1, basically. That's typically how it is with sells properties for affordable housing.
Okay, great. And then what about tax revenue going forward? Is that exempt?
They are exempt because we would be forming an HDFC that would own the buildings. So the HDFC is exempt under Article 11 from paying any real estate tax.
And the reason why this is so, I should mention, is that the COT would lease the land to the owner of the building for 99 years with option to renew upon the commitment that the house will be kept affordable not for 10, 20, or 30 years, but in perpetuity. And that's why we would also get the Article 11.
Got it. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Alistair. Thank you, everyone. Megan, go ahead.
My first question is, and sorry if I missed this, but what level AMI are these apartments being targeted or set aside for? And the second, go ahead.
Oh, if you want to do your second question, you can.
It's unrelated, so go ahead.
Okay, so basically for both these projects, the median income would be less than 60% of AMI, but we would also be trying to target people at as low as 30% of AMI. It would really depend on the subsidies that are available. Using low-income housing tax credit financing, you do have some flexibility with some units could be as low as 30% and some up to 80%, but the average would be coming in closer to 60% of AMI.
Okay, and my second question is, How can you afford to build the development if it's all affordable housing? Is it because you're not for profits? You're not looking to make a profit on this? It's just to provide the service of affordable housing?
Well, it's partly because the funding, like we would be looking to get low-income housing tax credit financing and bond financing and other, we could be going to HCR for the home program. We would look at different subsidies. There's also RESO-A funding that we could try to access. So a lot of this is basically forgivable grants. In the case of the low-income housing tax credit financing, it's the way that program works is that private investors buy tax credits. So you have a consultant that basically syndicates the tax credits. They are bought by banks, different companies, insurance companies that basically they get to write off their taxes for a period of 10 years. And those funds go into the project. So you don't have to pay those funds back, but they just stay in the project. And for the first 10 years, they basically own 99.9% of the building. But then there's an exit of those investors at the end of a certain period of time. And then the building reverts entirely to like ownership by the HDFC, and the CLT would own the land under the buildings. So
Gotcha. In the meantime, they're getting tax credits, so they're happy.
yeah, so there really isn't, the goal is to minimize how much debt service you're carrying, and depending on the financing that we would have to take on some debt service, but the goal is to try to avoid that so that we can keep the rents as affordable as possible.
Yeah, the goal is really to minimize, if not eliminate, the need to borrow any money that has to be paid back, because any kind of loan, however favorable the interest rates might be, has to be paid back and has to be factored into the rents, which militates against deep affordability, which is the ultimate goal, to make the housing as affordable as possible.
All right, thank you. Damaris, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Steve and Val. Thanks for coming to make this presentation. My opinion may not be as popular as you would like it to be. So I just want to tell you that starting off. The Fifth Street site, I'm in total agreement with. I think that it should not be sitting there being used as a parking lot when we have, other necessities. I think the bigger issue for me is the Sixth Street site, and for a variety of reasons. So I really want to just say they're mostly questions that I'd like for you all to, address and to consider. The first thing I want to say is that the disposition of NYCHA land is a very contentious issue, and it has been for a very long time, for a variety of reasons, all the way stemming back to projects like Hope 6, and just really bad practices on how NYCHA disposes of land. And people have fought, and goals in particular, that's not my hat, but just to say, had a huge role about 10 years ago in ensuring that they paid closer attention to and took seriously Section 18, because it was causing us to lose a lot of housing. But the issue here for me is it's not so much the CLT and the control, but it is about that NYCHA's in a crisis. And so all of NYCHA's land and all of their resources, there's a firm belief among residents that it should really be used to benefit the sustaining of public housing. And so I guess my question is, one, how do y'all feel about the fact that you would be acquiring this land with no purchase price and no reinvestment in NYCHA? Or maybe you can speak to what that reinvestment might look like. Number two is, in the development of the building, will NYCHA residents receive a priority for housing? And the AMIs are very different too, because even in NYCHA, the AMI goes up to 80%. So it's 80% of the AMI and below. And then in terms of like thinking about the space and how much, community facility space, that the Bracetti space, which is really just like 2 blocks down, is huge also, and is also being used as community space. So I'm not saying that we have enough space. I'm just also just saying that if we're making arguments to the housing authority about like how we would use this land and why they would, you know, release it and give you site control. And that's one of the things, like to have community space, you should know that they are in the process at, you know, of leasing out a lot of their spaces in the neighborhood, and they're all pretty close by. So those are just some things to start with. You know, I mean, I have other questions about like, you know, who would manage the site, and that kind of stuff. And, you know, I know you talked about like different low-income housing tax credits, but what would be the long-term funding for, you know, the project? I mean, given that, yeah, you know, we have a housing crisis, but we also have a crisis in keeping it funded and, you know, well-maintained. So yeah, those are all some of my questions. So I'm happy to repeat any of them, but I'm also just happy to let it be and let you start to address some of them.
Yeah, well, with regard to your point about, you know, NYCHA residents believing that that any NYCHA property should be used to develop or to benefit them or sustain public housing, you know, I get that point. I think that's a valid concern, but I think, you know, we would certainly welcome, you know, well, I don't know to what extent we would be able to just simply make the new housing available to NYCHA residents. I would need to learn more about what their policy is, because typically when you build new housing, you know, you have to market it citywide, and you have to, you know, you may have some community preference, although that's being contested legally. So I don't know the answer to your question about that. Maybe you can educate me about whether or not we'd be able to make the new housing available solely to NYCHA residents who want to relocate out of substandard units in nearby in other NYCHA projects. We'd certainly be open to that. I mean, I don't think we have an issue with that, but
when NYCHA proposed it, when they were proposing their infill projects, they talked about reserving a portion of the units because it was in fact a demand that was coming from, you know, the local residents. So they did talk about it, and they did include it in their subsequent presentations as a selling point that they would do that. And also, you know, there was talk about some of the extra space and other amenities and involving residents in thinking through some of that as well.
Okay.
Right.
As we mentioned in our presentation, we'd certainly very willing and would like to engage NYCHA residents to talk about this project. And if ultimately NYCHA residents feel that they don't want to support development on this site, you know, we would respect that. But what we've done is, you know, we've done, at least so far, we've outreached as best we can to the residents of LES2, and the majority of them have signed the petition in support of developing this site for this purpose. So we'd like to continue to have more engagement with them to figure out, you know, what kind of, you know, the unit mix, what kind of, you know, programming they'd be interested in having on the site. In terms of your question about this long-term sustainability and the affordability of the project, which is challenging for nonprofit housing providers, you know, all over the city, I can say that in terms of the Cooper Square Mutual Housing, which was a gut rehab project, so it wasn't new construction, but those units are among the most affordable in the city. I think the typical rent tenants is paying is affordable for people at less than 40% of AMI. And they've been able to sustain those. They only became a co-op in 2012, but they have managed the building since 1991. And so for 30 years, they've been keeping rents affordable for a generation, and hopefully they'll be able to do the same for the next generation.
And Steve, let me just ask a question, and I guess Val, right? Because this was like your wheelhouse for a long time. So, you know, as the units were so affordable, and I know that they've been sustaining the affordability levels, but I'm assuming that also means that the revenues that were generated were enough to maintain the repairs and all those other sort of structural issues within the properties.
That is correct. First of all, just to add a little bit to what Steve was saying, Damaris, the housing in the Cooper Square Mutual Housing Association, which of course can't be directly compared because we're talking about renovation, not new construction. are affordable to families from about 27% of AMI to about 35 or 36% of AMI, with 30%, as we know, sort of deemed as the gold standard. And again, the reason is that there was no loan to be paid back. So this is a little bit different. It's also new construction. As far as providing any kind of preference for NYCHA tenants to move into this new project, to the extent that it's legally allowable, I don't think anybody would have a problem with that. You know, we need to deal with the current litigation that is challenging community preference, but if it can be done, I think we'll be all for it. I also want to mention that CLT housing is social housing, and it's very much the same as public housing. There's no money to be made by any tenants, selling of apartments, okay? But there's also another distinction. The tenants will have a role in the governance of their homes, something which does not exist in NYCHA housing, where they're told from the top down, this is what you got to do or else. So it empowers the tenants. It might even provide a model for improved public housing if this project succeeds. So we're really looking forward to using that as we called at the beginning as a pilot project.
Okay. I mean, I think those are all, I don't want to keep taking the floor like this, but I think those are all, good points to consider. But I do think that you have to be explicit and to gain real support. And to me, to make this make sense, we have to be clear about what the benefit is to the institution of public housing that's in crisis right now. And I don't think that it's enough to say that we're going to create more affordable housing when we already have so many challenges in sustaining what we have. And obviously, I want to create more affordable housing. That's really not the issue, right? But the issue is that we have, and many residents across the city have challenged this model of disposition of land to be used to build other housing, whether it's completely affordable or with private developers, when they're in crisis and there's no way to show or for that land to benefit, the current problem that we're facing right now. So the institution itself. So I think that's some of the stuff that we probably, you might want to start thinking about and speaking to, because I know it'll come up for us.
I would just add one more thing also, Damaris. The site, as we presented, the size of it is relatively small. And also subtract the air rights that we would get from the 6th Street Center, it would be even smaller. So in terms of what likely would happen to this site if we do not develop it, it's going to remain a parking lot for NYCHA staff.
I understand, but just keep in mind what I'm saying. There's a lot of a lot of local strife, a lot of local contention around buildings and things that we build in this neighborhood that don't tend to benefit the local folks who are already struggling and feel like they're being ignored. And while we understand that it's not that cut and dry, we also have to understand that is public perception, and it could make or break how we move forward.
Yeah. I mean, I just would add also that, even if every NYCHA site were sold for market value to raise money to try to benefit existing NYCHA projects, it's not going to generate the $40 billion or so.
It's not, but it's still everything helps is the way they look at it.
Yeah. No,
advocates that are thinking about this, think about it as a multi-pronged strategy. It's not just in the revenue that is generated from the sale of the properties, but it's a lot of other things that they're thinking about. Federal subsidies, local subsidies, state subsidies, you know that. So, I mean, I think those are really important points. And I raise these issues because I already know that you will get these questions moving forward if there are questions that we have. And, that I support, and that Goal supports the work that you all do. So this is not about that, but it is about making sure that even in that support, we're thinking about all the facets of this.
And I'm sorry to cut this line of questioning off. It's just, I think that we've probably reached the end of productive conversation on this. Damaris, thank you for sharing that, and thank you for your answers, presenters. I'm going to move on unless we have other hands from committee members. I'm going to move on to attendees. I see 5 hands up. I'm going to promote you to panelists. I'm going to cut you off after 1 minute. Again, I'm really sorry. We just a little pressed for time today. So I am promoting first someone whose name is Carol Putra, CZYZ. Carol, I assume you're getting promoted.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please go ahead. You have 1 minute.
Hello?
We can hear you. Please go ahead. You have 1 minute.
I am speaking on behalf of the East Fifth Street Block Association, which includes 2 blocks between Cooper Square and First Avenue. We are against the senior housing being proposed for the police parking lot. This is not an underused lot, but one that is in close proximity to an extremely active police precinct and a school for disabled students. Major construction will require large equipment such as cranes, forklifts, bulldozers, etc. All of this would necessitate intermittent closings of our narrow street. How can the police serve and protect our residents from harm without 24/7 access to the street? Is it worth even 1 life lost to a shooting, a stabbing, or a domestic violence dispute because of a delayed response? In addition, PS 751 is a school for students with multiple disabilities, such as autism, cognitive delays, and emotional challenges. Isn't it bad enough that their progress was set back by COVID? Now they
All
would.
right, Carol, I'm gonna have to cut you off. I'm sorry. We've got a limit of 1 minute.
I'm almost finished. Everyone else spoke very long. Now
So
they would have to learn.
Those were
how to
committee
learn-
members, Carol. I'm sorry. I gave you an extra 15 seconds.
Thanks.
All right, the next hand I see is Klaus Habermeyer. Klaus, I'm promoting you to panelist. And could I ask before Klaus starts, whoever's sharing their screen, could they please unshare their screen?
Yeah, sure. 1 second. There we
Thank
go.
you very much. All right, Klaus, please go ahead. Klaus, if you're trying to speak, you're muted.
All right, I'm unmuted. Sorry, guys. It
Yes,
mutes
go
you
ahead.
when you switch over. I didn't know that. So anyway, I agree that we need more affordable and low-income housing. However, I severely question the Fifth Street location. I don't think it's a good location for the reasons that Carol mentioned, but also for any large building that has more than 12 or 14 units. It just ruins the characteristic of the neighborhood. All the buildings around here are about 12 to 14 units, and it simply doesn't fit, and it feels like a land grab. On top of that, there's literally no parks available between Avenue A going west all the way to 3rd Avenue between 1st and 14th Street. There's no parks, no open spaces. We want that too. And so I think it's a bad idea. And also, we're not misplacing any people who can't live here. They either already live here or they don't. So this is not the best location for it. We can go out to Queens or Brooklyn or find areas that are a little bit less tight where we can provide affordable housing. That's all I got to say. But I don't like that location. Also, the stats about the police parking lot are wrong. It's about 50% police cars, 50% their private cars. It's not like every once in a while a police car in there.
All right, thank you, Klaus. I'm going to send you back to the attendees, and I will be promoting Kazi Islam. Kazi, hit accept, please. All right, you can go ahead. Make sure you unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Kazi Islam. I am the president of LES2, and also I am the treasurer of the Manhattan South District Council of President. But today meeting, I didn't know anything about that. And whatever you said, our support is a totally deception, totally lie and deception. And the people sign, the people, they go room by room, house by house, they deceive them, they lie them, and absolutely we didn't decide yet any decision. And everything deception, I am against them. Deception cannot gain anything.
Well, I feel like I'd like to respond to that because I feel it's a total mischaracterization of what's happened. We have had
We had meeting, not decided. And Mr. Epstein, Harvey Epstein said, edit the agreement with them, and they sent back after editing. They didn't send back to me for finalize the thing. And until now, we didn't have any meeting. It means that it's not done. So how can they say it is a supporting by us or me? It's absolutely false.
Well, Harvey has been the sort of point person.
No, Harvey, I had a conversation with Mr. Harvey. He said up to me, and we have to sit together and finalize that. And finally, they didn't send the paper to me, not a single piece of paper to me for finalize the thing. It means that I'm absolutely aware and knowledgeable about this. It's a totally false. We don't have any support at all. And from beginning to now, it's lying and cheating.
Again,
Look, I'm sorry to cut this.
Listen,
I'm sorry to cut you both off.
Yeah,
Look,
I have all.
TB3 is not the forum. We're not Crossfire. I think that we're probably not going to resolve this issue today, but it sounds like we've heard from Kazi about his support of the project, or lack thereof. So thank you, Kazi, for speaking. I'm sorry, got to maintain some level of decorum here. Kazi, I'm going to send you back to attendees. John Hudson White, I am promoting you to panelist. Please accept and unmute yourself.
Hi, can you see me? Or hear me? Can you hear me? I just had one question really in relation to the size. I'm a resident on the street, but Steve Herrick mentioned it would be only 7 stories tall. I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention that it's 100 feet wide, which we think is a little bit disruptive potentially, like Klaus mentioned. So I was just curious what your flexibility is on, like, say the size of the total footprint, just respecting some of the needs of other people in the community, the police, the school. And my second question is, like, how open would you be to considering sort of a larger development that meets those needs of those users, if that makes sense?
I'm not totally sure. First of all, there's a sort of a playground or another space that is adjacent to the site. So we're not talking about developing on that site. We're talking just about the police parking lot. And so that's the footprint.
So would you be open to that as an idea to kind of rethink it, like from the point of view of all the interests? Just to step back for a second, I'm kind of new to this neighborhood. I'm not super acquainted with everything, but just if you were to think about all the users in this community, and I'm aware of the commendability of the affordable housing, but if you were to just look at it from that viewpoint, like,
I mean, as I said, we're open to having community engagement process and talking to people on the block to get first of all, with an architect who could do renderings and get feedback from people and make revisions. So I think it's a building also that could potentially have a green roof, in addition to having landscape backyard that could be made accessible to people on the block. So a 4,000 square foot space on the block behind the building that could be open to people on the block, I would think would be an amenity that they don't currently have, while also still preserving parking for the police below grade, so below ground. So we're open. We don't have a design done at this stage, so we're really just looking to put out an idea, say that we think that this is a site that could could serve the needs for seniors in our community and in the city, as well as also
And
still.
potentially other users, right? That's what you're saying. That was my only question, is about the size, because it's 100 feet wide is quite large compared to, you know,
Well,
the buildings in the streets. I'm just curious, like how open you'd be to.
All right, and John, after that, I'm gonna cut you off, okay?
Yeah, I mean, you need to have a certain amount of efficiency of space in order to really have a viable building. So you kind of, I don't think we'd want to do a building that's less than 100 feet wide. We just want to be able to maximize the number of units because it makes it easier to finance a project like this.
It should be noted that 100 feet wide is about equivalent to 4 tenement buildings right next to each other.
All right, thank you, John. I'm kicking you back to attendees. Mike Schweinsberg, I am promoting you to panelist. All right, Mike, unmute yourself and go ahead.
Mute and, sorry, okay. Time starts now, I hope. So again, the 504 Democratic Club is the nation's first and largest advocating for the civil rights of people with disabilities, but I am also the president of the 8BCD Block Association and vice president of the Historic Community Pabon Garden, so I'm fully invested in this neighborhood. Fully 25% of New Yorkers identify as being disabled, and an apartment cannot be permanently affordable if it is not accessible. To be permanently affordable for the tenant means having the ability to age in place or remain in your apartment should you become disabled as a tenant there. So I love SCCC, but we cannot support the 6th Street site. The project by Cooper Square and the TLIO-CLT is a model for what all development should look like, because for now they are in very short supply. So this project must be prioritized. Not only does it fulfill a huge need for the disability community and for senior living, but it sets that example. The angled parking and existing parking lot provide much more parking than any other precinct in the city, so we question their need. But the need for whatever advantages all this space provides for the police is heavily outweighed by the needs of our disabled and senior communities who
All
are
right,
so
Mike, I'm
desperately
sorry
in
to
need
cut
of
you off.
housing that allows them to continue to lead their
I'm sorry
more
to cut you off,
dignified
but I gave you a little bit extra
lives in
time.
their own
Thank
neighborhood.
you,
We
thank
urge
you
our
for your
community to
comments.
stand strong behind this project. Thank you kindly.
All right. I really would appreciate if folks would stop talking when I ask them to cut. I am giving everyone an extra 15 or 20 seconds, which, look, I'm not trying to be a tyrant here, but we really do have a lot of people with their hands raised. We got to get through it. So when I ask you to stop, please stop. Trevor, I have promoted you to panelist. You want to go ahead?
Hi, thanks. I'm just a father of some kids in the community. We have a kid in the Earth School right next door, so it'd be great to have more community space on the 6th Street site. And I'm just for affordable housing. I helped them make a rendering just to be able to see what it could look on the site. So I figured to quickly address the fact that even though they are 100 feet wide projects, you can easily break that down into a scale that would match the community. 7 stories would work well in the community, especially if you set back on the upper stories. So I think the ideas of scale can easily be addressed when community gets involved and talked to about the architecture and make sure that it respects what is there and seamlessly matches it, and will work a lot better any building than a parking lot. A continuous street front architecturally and urban scale wise is really important to creating a community. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Trevor. I'm promoting Katie to panelist. Katie, if you can unmute yourself, you have 1 minute.
Hi, I'm someone who's had the benefit of CL protected affordable housing as a member of Cooper Square MHA for the past 30 years, which has enabled me to be a CUNY professor teaching students who are considered not able to enter credit classes without better English. It was a passion and I loved it. I'm now looking around at my neighbors and seeing that people who don't live where I do are getting COPD, are having serious physical problems as they get older. You all know we live in a naturally occurring retirement community. I see this as a way that people can stay in their community. And this community that I live in has been incredible for both promoting health and families, multi-generations, where each generation is more accomplished. The affordability is everything, and elevators are everything. There are not a lot of elevators in the Lower East Side. And that's the problem that I think above all these buildings, when we talk about them, everyone talks about the elevators. It's a beautiful neighborhood. Community will be built around these buildings. And I think the people involved, because I've worked with them in my own
All
community.
right, Katie, I'm sorry to cut you off, but that's a minute and 20 odd seconds. Thank you for your comments. I'm going to kick you back to attendees. Zeke, I'm promoting you to panelist. Zeke, if you could unmute yourself, you've got a minute. And just change.
Hello, my name is Zeke. I'm a resident of Fifth Street, and I'm here to voice my enthusiastic support for this project. A parking lot is a terrible use of space in a dense neighborhood like this in New York City. It ruins the urban fabric and honestly just bums me out every morning when I walk past it. We're in a housing crisis, and seniors deserve the right to grow old in the neighborhood they lived in their whole lives. Also, I will say there are parks available. There's plenty of recreation space literally across the street in the Village View development, and famously, Tompkins Square Park is just 3 blocks away.
All right, thank you, Zeke, and I appreciate the succinct comment. I am kicking you back to attendees. Allison Madrin, I am promoting you to panelist. Allison, unmute yourself. You've got a minute.
Hi, I just have a quick question. What's the timeline for these projects? Do we have any kind of idea of when they might start or be completed? Thank you.
I guess I'll answer that. It takes a long time to develop affordable housing in New York City. Assuming that either one of these projects went forward, speaking just about Fifth Street, which is probably less complicated, it would still involve a ULURP process. There's a pre-development process where, and also in the case of the Fifth Street site, which is senior housing, the SARA program has a large pipeline that's sort of waiting. So it could be several years before that project could be funded to break ground. And then it would probably take, could take 1.5 to 2 years to build the building. So I would say, even if everything went smoothly, probably 5 years from now, we would actually have a building that was ready to open.
Oh, can I ask a follow-up?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Is there like a time we would get to see proposed plans of what's being?
Sure. I mean, I hope, I think people, first of all, who are interested should get in touch with Cooper Square Committee. You could, we're located at 61 East 4th Street. You can get on our mailing list. But we want to do outreach to the community. And if either of these projects go forward, we want to engage the community. So we're not going to just show up with a finished product. We really want to know what people would like to see, people who want to see affordable housing. And if they're not in favor of this, then I don't know what to tell them. But assuming this is going to move forward, we welcome input from people in terms of the design of the building and the unit mix and the population being served and programming.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Allison. I'm kicking you back to attendees. I'm promoting Yapa to panelist. And then Damaris, I'll get you. Did you raise your hand on purpose? Okay, I'll get you after this. All right, please go ahead.
I'm here to urge Community Board 3 to pass the proper resolutions to support the East 5th and East 6th Street sites. During our housing crisis, our city urgently needs more affordable and accessible housing for our low-income folks, and this housing will be permanently affordable. As previously mentioned, we have collected hundreds and hundreds of signatures from the community members who support this. They showed excitement about the sites, and the conversations have been rich. This is the opportunity to be on the right side of history. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. And we're going to take a brief intermission from the public to turn it back to a committee member. Damaris, please go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Steve, I know that, when we were talking about the NYCHA site, you questioned whether there was an ability to have a community preference, right?
Mhm.
And I mentioned that NYCHA, has proposed that in the past. But for Fifth Street, let's say that it only moves forward with Fifth Street and the senior housing. Can we have a community preference? Because I think if we're saying that we want to build senior housing for folks because we're a naturally occurring retirement community and we want to give people, maybe that's one way to really get even more support by ensuring that, we can actually house some of our seniors at some point in time.
Sure. I mean, we would certainly like to advocate for maximum community preference. I mean,
So that's possible in
it's
this
been-
project?
well, there has been 50% community preference on other projects in the
Okay.
past. We've done projects like that. And, we certainly would like that. It's a question of like, well, there is this lawsuit that's pending, so I don't know what's ultimately going to get decided, but yeah, I mean, when you do all the work to build something, you kind of really want that it's going to benefit local residents because it's just an arduous task to build any affordable housing.
I know.
If I may add 2 cents to that, Maris, we have always advocated in every project I was involved in for community preference, at least 50%. We actually tried to get more, but we only got 50%.
Right.
The obstacle is not us, not this land is ours, not Cooper Square Committee.
I'm
but
not
it's
suggesting that, Val. I wasn't saying that y'all don't want to.
No, I
I was just
understand.
saying, based on the funding, can we do that?
Based on the funding doesn't.
That you're proposing to fund the project,
I don't think the funding is directly related to community preference. They're like almost separate. But I also want to mention that we're working in coalition with an organization called the New York City Community Land Initiative, which has housing organizations, particularly COTs for all 5 boroughs. And we are trying to come up with a proposal for community preference that may meet legal objections. And basically the option we're looking at is based on the right to remain and the right to return. But how that gets implemented, it's still a long discussion. But if we can do it, we're all for it.
All right, thank you. Alistair, go ahead, and then we'll return to our final members of the public.
Thanks. Steve, one public member mentioned they didn't understand how it would be used by a community because seniors in our community are already in housing. Could you elaborate on kind of what the pros, how a senior would end up here if they're already in existing housing? And the other question I have for you, is it rent? Is it zero rent for the seniors, or is it based on an income that they have? And if it is zero rent, how do you provide for the maintenance of the housing in the years to come? Thank you.
Sure. Well, first of all, in terms of the rent, they'll be paying 30% of their income typically. So whatever their income, it's 50% of AMI or 60%, that the rent will be based on that, and they have to fit within that window to be eligible. Their income has to meet the threshold to qualify. In terms of who would get into this housing, we have a lot of people aging in place in upper floors in walk-up tenements all throughout the neighborhood. Those are people who many of them are already on waiting lists for other housing. So they are looking at Tenant Connect for opportunities to apply for housing when it comes available. So something like this would get, in the case of, the Seward Park, where it became Essex Crossing, the Francis Golden apartments were developed. It was 99 units plus a unit for the super. They got over 60,000 applications. It might have been closer to 80,000 applications for that particular site. It's just incredible how many seniors are looking for affordable housing around the city. And this is a very desirable neighborhood, obviously. So a lot of people all over the city are, there are other sites in other neighborhoods that don't get as many applications, although they still get a lot. But this neighborhood in particular gets a lot of applications.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Just to add one more on top of that, there are also a lot of seniors from this neighborhood who have already been displaced, right? And so the opportunity of creating new affordable housing, makes potential space for those folks as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, I
So
know
now
I'm not a
very-
presenter, but I
very
do want to
briefly-
say one thing to them about the housing for seniors. It is very true. Seniors in this neighborhood are not all housed. That is not true. There's a lot of doubled up seniors living in NYCHA and other apartments in Walkup. We know because we serve seniors too, and a lot of them are in desperate need.
All right, thank you. We're going to turn it back to members of the public. Joanne Kennedy, you're up next. I'm promoting you to panelist. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Pay no attention to my yelling teenager. It's the end of high school, and it's summer vacation. I just want to say I enthusiastically support both of these projects. I live on Fifth Street. Lack of housing is an existential crisis for our city, and every community must do what we can to build housing so people can live here. That's all.
Thank you, Joanne.
You muted
Sorry.
yourself.
Yes, I noticed that. Thank you. Sorry, I'm going to kick you back to the panelists. Thank you for your comments. And I will be promoting Tito Delgado as it looks like our final member of the public. If there are any other members of the public who wish to speak, you can raise your hand now and you can get promoted. Otherwise, we will move on to a resolution after Tito Delgado.
Hello,
right.
can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Oh, great. So my name is Tito, and I grew up in the neighborhood. I've been fighting for housing for over 45 years in this neighborhood. And it's ironic, but I had to move out of the neighborhood because I'm an old guy now and I'm disabled. And I lived on a 5th floor walk up. I would love to come back to my neighborhood, the one that I helped build. And this would be a great opportunity, not just for me, but for the many seniors who are imprisoned in their homes. They can't go out because they can't do those stairs. So I totally support this project. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, Tito. And
Bring
thank
me
you-
back home, please.
Thank you for coming to speak. I know that one voice that we don't hear an awful lot around here is folks who, like Damaris was mentioning before, lived here and then left. And they were a member of our community too. All right, I'm seeing one last person, William. I'm going to promote you to panelist. Oh, William has declined to be promoted to panelist. William, I'm going to try to promote you to panelist again. If you decline it again, then okay, there we go.
He might be muted.
All right, William, you can go ahead. Nope, now you're muted. William, if you could unmute yourself.
Zoom in and then you get recognized individually. Okay,
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
you gotta click on.
Whatever happened to humanity? I live in this neighborhood practically all of my life. I'm a 78-year-old senior. Thank God I still have all my constitutions. I lack for nothing except for being my brother's keeper. I see, I hope that no one in a panel or no one that's supposed to building housing for seniors and the disabled don't come into a situation where they're going to need housing with an elevator and a place where they can be with a wheel accessible chairs. Please, I support the projects on Fifth Street and on Sixth Street. And I hope everybody feels that housing is more important than a park. And this is all I have to say right now. I'm kind of emotional right now, but I support both projects on Fifth and Sixth Street. Thank you so much, and everybody have a blessed evening.
All right. Well, thank you, William, and thank you for joining us. I'm going to kick you back to the panelists now. No, out of the panelists, back to attendee. All right. Now we've come to the part of our evening where we will discuss resolutions. As discussed previously, oops, did I successfully? There we go. As discussed previously, I think the best way to do this is for us to take up the projects one at a time, because we'll need to pass 2 different resolutions for each. So I first have a draft of the Fifth Street resolution, and I received some feedback after the last one that it was a little bit hard for people with bad eyes to read the resolution when I did the last thing. So I'm going to zoom in and scroll. If I'm scrolling too fast or too slow, pipe up. My feelings won't be hurt. All right. All right. Can everyone read that?
Keep an eye on.
All right, without objection, I'm going to scroll on. Speak now or miss out on reading. All right. I have offered this resolution for adoption. Do I hear a motion to get this on the table so we can amend it? I'm not sure what the proper posture of that motion is, but
Motion to adopt the resolution to the table,
Uh,
whatever proper posture is.
yeah, thank you
Sec-
very much. Do I hear a
Second.
All right, fantastic. The motion is properly before us. I
So-
see a hand. Alistair, go ahead. Let's
Jake,
discuss.
I would like, just like to add in there that they're gonna preserve the parking. Because that was discussed and that's in the plan. So I'd like to add in there that they're gonna preserve the parking underground.
I think they said they
Sure.
were gonna attempt to. I don't know.
Yeah, but attempt is. I think you can do it. It's costly. Anything's doable. But I think they should really. I think in the proposal, they said attempt, and then when I spoke, when Steve spoke, I think he implied that they were going to, he wasn't sure if what he said, one floor they could do, but he wasn't sure if that would take care of all the parking. So there should be something in there about the parking, I think.
All right, so. I
Because you are
suppose-
taking that away from the police department. And I think that's important to them. And I think you'll also get a lot less resistance from the police department if the parking is preserved for the better part.
Sure. So Alistair, I'm hearing and construing your comment as a amendment. Could you offer?
Language?
Yeah,
Oh,
give me
thank
something to
you.
write.
Thanks, Jake. I was just gonna throw out ideas.
Yeah. I mean,
Wasn't gonna
look,
do the work.
you're an ideas guy. I get it. So what I'm hearing is a amendment. So let's get the text on and then we can debate the amendment.
Okay.
Whereas the project
Is
would-
to include parking underground that will aim to provide the same amount of parking as currently exists on the lot.
To replace these spaces available.
Can I offer something friendly? The statement above says could, and then here we're saying that it
Yeah.
would, right? And so I
Yeah,
feel
great.
like that's a contradiction to me.
Yeah, you are right. I think that could is the right verb tense here. Thank you, Damaris.
Thank you.
All right, we have this amendment before us. Do we have debate on this topic? Or,
A point of information.
yeah,
I have seen things change a lot around here, but usually on the community board, to make changes, you would have to a motion that has been put forward and second is to have the person who make the motion at least is asked whether they'll accept any amendments. I've seen things have been changing so much that was the procedure that we used to use. If I make a motion, you can't amend it without me accepting the amendment.
as a matter of parliamentary procedure, I'm actually not sure that a friendly amendment is a thing. My understanding is that amendments are amendments, and it sounded like, to me at least, that Alastair had made sort of a general proposal for an amendment, and then Damaris made a suggestion for how that might be adopted. I don't think that we were really running afoul of Robert's rules there, but I appreciate the flag. Susan, go ahead.
Just want to remind everyone that this would require a Euler process. So while this would support the project going forward, everything is going to come back to the community board for final plans and community input.
Thank you for the reminder, Susan. That is important. So speaking to the amendment, we'll do a vote in a moment. I'm opposed to this amendment. I don't think that, for me at least, a condition of supporting this project is the parking. As a matter of fact, I would prefer if there were less parking in Lower Manhattan. I understand that might bristle some NYPD feathers, but congestion pricing is on its way. Cars are a blight on Lower Manhattan, on our community in particular. And I would love to see, if we were going to have a strong NYPD presence in the neighborhood, which it seems like we are, then I'd like to see them on their feet and not driving around. I cannot tell you how many times I've been nearly doored by cars, knocked off, had my arm crushed into pieces by cops incorrectly parked. I think that we are better off. My choices are no parking, underground parking, above ground parking. So I'm going to oppose this. I'm sorry, this is my last meeting. I got to speak my mind. Megan, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I agree that I don't think approval of this project should be contingent on their parking. Also, I don't think it should be that if we are going to adopt it, I don't think it should be the same number of spaces, because some people were saying that they're not even sure that those are all cop car spaces. Some just might be other spaces or long-term parking spaces. Yeah, I'm not supportive of the parking contingent. I hear cops don't get paid a lot of money. Sometimes they have to, because of affordable housing, sometimes they have to live in Pennsylvania in order to work in New York City. So like, I get it. To me, if I could go do a middle ground, I would say, maybe could support the idea of parking, but not the exact same number of spaces.
Jake, you're muted.
You're right.
I'm done.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Megan. Andre, go ahead.
I had another point, but so we're just debating the amendment right now, right?
That's right.
Okay. Yeah, I guess since I'll come back to bring up another point, but I guess since we're on the topic of this debate, I'll just offer my opinion too, which is that I agree with you in that, like, I would like us to pedestrianize our cities more, but I also don't know what an underground, like if the possibility of a dwelling unit, a subterranean dwelling unit would be viable either. I don't know if that's something that we're entertaining, and probably something we should have asked at the beginning. But otherwise, I'm also like sympathetic to you, Jake, even though I know that's a very unpopular opinion.
I don't think they know whether the underground parking is viable yet or not without doing the studies.
That's my understanding as well, Megan. Thank you both. Alistair, please go ahead.
Sure. I think the reason I want to put the parking in there was twofold. One, it was discussed, and that was kind of an idea that was put forth by Steve. Two, I think if you don't have parking, you're going to potentially have a problem with police double parking, triple parking on the sidewalk all over the place, and you're going to have more community issues long term. So I'm kind of looking down the road and trying to prevent parking disasters by helping replace the parking underground. And I think you'll get more support by replacing the existing kind of use that's there and put it underground. And I think the language that says could leaves it open to, it's not a firm, but it is, that was what the intention was, and that was what the presentation basically stated. Thank you.
Thank you, Alistair. Do we have any final comments on the amendment?
Do we have to say underground?
That's a good question.
Can it just be like, go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
Could it just be like, whereas the project could include parking to replace, and I was thinking some, but I think that would be a flag. So I'm wondering if anybody can offer a less objectionable word than some, but that way, it gives some flexibility here to the developers, right? So, I mean, could does that too, but then it says could do underground. So I'm just, according to what Steve said, it could be on the first floor, it could be on the second, may not be viable underground if it moves forward. I'm not saying we must include the parking. I'm just saying if we do include an amendment, then maybe we should make it less strict.
Sure. I mean, my impression, quite frankly, is that, this project could also include any number of things, right? It could have, solar panels on the roof. It could have big mirrors on the roof. It could have anything. And so if we're just saying that it could possibly have on-site parking or nearby parking, then I'd be inclined against including anything at all. But potentially, if once we've heard this amendment, maybe we'll move on to that amendment if there's appetite for it, or if this one doesn't pass. Trevor, please go ahead.
Right now, we're discussing the amendment on the floor, which is to the question of parking. So I'm calling a question on whether we want to continue discussion on this.
Thank you very much. I don't remember what I do when you call a question, but I agree. So I guess if there's a motion to overrule the chair, I would entertain that, but otherwise we're going to take a vote on this.
So
Thank you very
Jake,
much.
we're taking a vote on the amendment or the whole thing?
On just the amendment. So a yes is you'd like to adopt the amendment as is. A no is you want to reject the amendment. Andrea, could you call the roll? I can't have it up and have
Yes, no problem.
Andrea, can you please let us know what the amendment is? Because I think there's been some discussion. I'm not sure what the exact language of the amendment is.
So I'll read it out loud. Whereas the project could include underground parking to replace the spaces available presently on the parcel.
Thank
you. Jake Gold,
No.
Damaris Reyes,
I abstain on this question right now. Sorry.
Ariadna Chua,
Yes.
Alistair Economacus,
Yes.
Andrea Gordillo, no. Herman Hewitt,
No,
Trevor Holland,
Yes.
Laura Lugo is not present. Sandra Strother is not present. Dominic Berg, not present. Steve Herrick,
I don't
I
think.
have to abstain.
No,
Oh,
you're-
yes, that's
no,
right.
excuse
Sorry.
me.
Oh, shit,
You're
right?
Not abstaining, you're present, not voting.
Present, not voting.
Yes, thank you, Suzanne.
Megan Joy,
Yes. Because the word could.
All right, thank you, folks. By my count, it carries 4-3, so the amendment will be adopted. All right, moving on. Do people now have additional amendments on the Fifth Street resolution? Do they have any other comments? All right, Andrea, go ahead.
I'm just perplexed to
Herman,
find.
would you mind raising your hand before you speak? I'm sorry, we're gonna try and go call on people. in
Oh, I
order.
can't see, okay.
All right, Andrea, go ahead.
yeah, I want to propose a friendly amendment. I'm sorry to put more amendments forward, but I just want to mention something around accessibility. Like particularly if this is going to be senior housing, I mean, we should be building accessible housing in general, but especially for seniors. So whereas the project, I almost want to say should comply with all the ADA accessibility requirements.
So notwithstanding my typo, what do you think about whereas the project, if developed, should comply with all requirements under the Americans with Disabilities Act?
That works for me, I think.
All right, do we have a second? I mean, I'll second that. All right, discussing the amendment. Herman, I'm sorry to have you put your hand back down, but unless you have a comment germane specifically to this amendment, please raise your hand.
Yes, that's even not necessary because that's in the law for all housing for elderly and the handicap as part of any certificate of occupancy. So it's not even necessary to be in there because that's the general rule of housing development in the city of New York. Has to be meet handicap accessible stuff, which means the size of the doors, sometimes the bathrooms, even if you have a walk-up, today you have to have handicap accessibility because not everybody is in a wheelchair. Some people could walk up the stairs. So I don't think that's necessary.
All right, thank you, Herman. Andrea, back to you.
I don't know if this would make it like, I'm not sure exactly the wording for this, or if I would need to like put forward another amendment type of thing or whatever, but notwithstanding my knowledge of like these kinds of laws, I still think we should just keep some essence of this amendment, just because aside from like code of like ADA accessibility, there's other types of accessibility that isn't necessarily included in the ADA or in legal compliance that I would just still want to express. I don't know, I can't think of anything right off the top of my head, but visual access, different types of like auditory disability, those sorts of things are things that we don't always think about, but that I would encourage us to address in this amendment. So
Sure. So if I'm hearing you correctly, I think that I'm going to construe that as a withdrawal of your amendment and a proposal of a substitute amendment.
Sorry to interrupt, but the reason I say that because I am an experienced housing developer. And I know the rules that governs handicap accessibility, and it's federal and it's also municipal. So
Thank you.
I
Thank you,
understand
Herman.
what you're trying to do, but I don't think it's necessary for this purpose.
Thank you, Herman. Andrea, I guess.
Just so, I mean, I could withdraw and offer an amendment to this or like an amended version of this. But I just want to make sure that developers aren't skirting, ADA, that there's maybe even more of a commitment to like different types of accessibility.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
yeah.
So I'm sorry to cut you off. I think what I'm hearing you say is that perhaps you would rather the amendment say something like the project if should develop should take special care to support or to be built with a mind towards those with all varieties of disability.
Yes.
Is that kind of what I'm hearing you say?
Yes. I think, yeah, I think so, but I also just want to just to verbalize what Herman was saying was like, I think that has something to do with kind of like building code has to follow ADA accessibility, like new developments. So yes, I'm trying to articulate exactly what would be like a strong language that kind of doesn't just allow us to just like choose to develop, like go with some kind of plan that like just has like no regard, I guess, towards the ADA. I don't want to take up time, but yeah, we can.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'm actually going to have Steve cut in line because it sounds like he.
Yeah, I think it would be fine if it says if developed will comply with all required. It's a description. It's a description of the project. It's because it will have to comply with ADA. We did another project where, we had Braille signs on the elevator and on doors. There was flashing light for people who are deaf. There are flashing lights if there's a fire. It's not just auditory. So there are requirements that the building have to meet ADA requirements for people with all kinds of disabilities. So.
All right. So
I think there was still discussion. Just wanted to flag that. I'm not sure.
Sorry.
I'm assuming the people with their hands up have a discussion.
Yes, I agree. I was going to pass it over to Megan.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I think we should keep it as it is because maybe the Americans with Disabilities Act goes beyond what our municipal, what the city requires.
Thank you, Megan. Damaris. Looks like maybe you're on the phone. Do you want to go ahead? Because I'll construe that as a no. Steve, do you have more that you'd like to add? No. Okay, Andrea, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't want to, I guess the correct wording before I like propose this amendment would be if the project, if developed, shall comply with all requirements under the ADA Accessibilities Act.
Very wise.
We want.
I think that's exactly the verb tense that we're looking for here.
Okay.
All right. Megan Damaris, do either of you have anything else to add? I see your hands up.
Oh, sorry. No.
Well, I mean, I don't even know. I'm sorry, y'all. I really apologize. I got an emergency call.
Don't worry about
And so I don't even know the last 2 minutes of conversation. So I'm just gonna let y'all lead this right now.
Okay, don't worry about it at all. All right, so it looks like the amendment before us reads, the amendment which has been properly If not seconded, seconded. Whereas the project, if developed, shall comply with all requirements under the Americans with Disabilities Act. I'm going to ask, I'm going to try first for unanimous consent. Are there any objections to adopting this amendment? If you object, you have to unmute. All right, hearing no objections is adopted. I pressed the wrong button. All right. Now we are back to the meat of the resolution. Do we have additional comments? Additional amendments? Raise your hands.
Can I put forward a motion to pass?
Yes, I think that's a good idea.
I'll second that.
Yeah, motion to call the question, I guess, which has properly been seconded. Andrea, could you do a roll call vote?
Sure. Jake Gold,
Yes.
Damaris Reyes,
Yes.
Ariana Chua,
Yes.
Alistair Economakis,
Yes.
Andrea Gordillo, yes. Herman Hewitt, Herman stepped aside. Okay. Trevor Holland,
Yes.
Laura Lugo, not present. Sandra Struther, not present. Dominic Berg, not present. Steve Herrick, present, not voting. Megan Joy
Yes.
and Anisha Stephen, also not present. Herman Hewitt,
Reluctantly on that amendment, I'll say yes.
Herman, we're voting for the whole resolution.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
got it, sorry. So, so it passes with, everybody who is present and or present not voting yes.
All right. Well, thank you all for your participation. And let's move on to the second to last item on the agenda. Sorry, folks, I know it's late. Is the 6th Street parcel. I'm going to, before I introduce, well, actually, okay, we'll go through this. We'll zoom in. Again, object if I'm scrolling too fast. All right. Is everyone ready to go forward on this one?
Yep.
Right. Let's see those hands.
1 second, I think we have the wrong address on the site here. Let me just check.
642-648.
Yeah, 42 to 648, because 638 is actually the 6th Street Center.
Noted. So I'm going to now move to adopt this resolution. Do I get a second?
Second,
Thank you. Let's see those hands.
Wait a
Okay.
second. I'm sorry. This
Sorry?
is the second resolution for 6th Street?
No, the last one was for 5th Street.
Oh, okay.
This is for Sixth Street.
Okay, so you said you're moving, putting forward a motion to
Yeah.
adopt this new resolution here?
Yeah, just to get it in front of us.
Got it.
So now let's see those hands. What do we think? Amendments, thoughts? I do have a thought, and I'd be curious what the committee's temperature on this is. I think that in light of the conversation that we heard that was led by Damaris about NYCHA procurement and that history there, I'm inclined to ask that the groups that brought this before us do a little bit more community engagement here and maybe go a little bit further in the process before bringing this back before us. And the reason that I say that is it sounds like there are some really complex, both personal dynamics and laws, federal and state and local, that might be at play here, where I think that we have found ourselves in the past bound by prior boards' commitments to projects where we liked it at the time, we liked it kind of with the grand scheme of the idea, but as it got drilled down into more specifics and as those nitty-gritty legal details got ironed out, it became a little more tenuous. And so I'm inclined to say, without a resolution, that we like the idea, but we'll probably want to hold out for a little bit more. Let's hear it. What do people think? Do people want to adopt the resolution? I'm just one vote here. Trevor, go ahead.
Well, I hear what you're saying, but right now there's a second amendment on this resolution, so we have to decide whether we want to adopt this resolution or not. That discussion probably could have happened beforehand.
Trevor, I think that maybe we've gotten a little mixed up. This is a second resolution. There are two resolutions. We've just taken up the second one. There are no
No, I
amendments.
understand that. So we're discussing this amendment, or has someone seconded the motion to?
Which amendment are you talking about, Trevor?
The one you're talking about right now. Has anyone seconded this to adopt this amendment? I mean, sorry, to adopt the resolution.
Yes, I believe we heard 2 seconds.
Right. So since someone has seconded the motion to adopt, we're now in discussion about the resolution itself, whether to adopt or not.
Or
to reject it.
Or
Correct.
the motion maker could withdraw the motion.
Correct.
I mean, look, I got the resolution in front of us so that we could discuss the kind of facets of it. And if it sounds like people don't want to go forward with the resolution, again, I don't want to steer the committee too much here. I'm just one guy. Then I'll withdraw the motion to adopt. And we can thank the folks who brought this to us and hope that they come back in the future. But if people want to go forward with the resolution, I wasn't going to keep that from them just because I'm the guy who wrote it. Damaris, go ahead. You're muted, Damaris.
I'm sorry. You know, I think that there are still plenty of questions. And while, you know, it pains me because I know Cooper Square's work and their history and their intention, I think that this property is not in any imminent danger of being lost to us at this moment. And I think we would do better to ensure that all parties are adequately in support of this because of the historic nature of what's been happening with NYCHA. So, you know, for me, I would rather them go back and, you know, hopefully when this is ironed out, and I'd be happy to even talk about that, and then come back later on when, you know, we have a better sense, because, you know, I think having the TA resident association sort of be confused or not confused, whatever the issue is, we got to iron it out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Megan, go ahead.
I would support your resolution to tell them to go back to the community groups, but I don't. Yeah, and I support what Tamara said. So that's it.
All right, do we have any other hands? If we don't hear other debate, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to I'm gonna withdraw my motion. And then we will table this resolution for the time being this isn't gonna be in the tabling motion, but much gratitude to the folks who came and presented today.
Jake, I mean, I don't know what the procedure is, but do we give them a chance to say anything?
I mean,
Or that's not part of, I mean, I'm a little rusty.
I also am not sure. Susan, are you still on?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly up to you. You can ask them how they feel about it, but I would also suggest instead, if you want to not, well, can I just give you other options? You could
Yeah, please.
have, instead of therefore be resolved, you could say, whereas there are certain conflicts, we ask the these groups to return to the other parties. I think Damaris gave some good language, and come back later when there is more agreement, or you can just withdraw it instead of tabling it. You could just vote it down.
Yeah. My feeling is that tabling is nicer, but I agree that I'd like to hear if Steve or Val or anyone would like to speak more to this. If there's a reason why we need to pass this now, or if we can't hear it in the future.
No, I think we're willing to try to engage with the community more. We have made efforts to try to have further meetings with the tenant association, but that just hasn't come to pass, which is unfortunate. And then this got put on the agenda for June because we knew summer was coming, and I would have been content with this site to wait a little bit longer till we had more discussions. So yeah, it's unfortunate that we were not aware of sort of the feelings of the tenant association president. We'll continue to work on this and see where we land.
Thank you,
We're
Steve.
happy about the outcome with the Fifth Street site, so thank you.
Speaking for myself personally, I hope you do continue working on this. And with that, I'm gonna make a motion to table this resolution. As we said back at my old job in the legislature, to lay gently on the table, which was the nicest way of killing someone's bill. Do we have any opposition to that? Otherwise, we're gonna pass that motion by unanimous consent. All right, hearing no opposition, we're gonna table this resolution. And Steve, Val, Ashwin, thank you for coming today. Really appreciate it. And I hope that you'll be in touch about this going forward with Susan and with us.
You do have to do a roll call vote.
Oh, to table?
I believe there has to be a roll call vote. I don't know about an exception for tabling, so I'll
All
leave
right.
it, right.
Got it. Thank you. Andrea, could you do a roll call vote to table?
Yes.
And just a reminder here, folks, that a yes is to table and to ask them to come back later, or to just not pass the resolution, and a no is to bring the resolution back up so that we could vote on it.
Okay. Jake Gold,
Yes.
Damaris Reyes,
Yes.
Ariana Chua,
Yes.
Alistair Economakis,
Yes.
Andrea Gordillo, yes. Herman Hewitt,
Yes.
Trevor Holland,
Yes.
Laura Lugo, not present. Sandra Struther, also not present. Mike Berg, not present. Erica Pachu's. I'll let you. Present, not voting. Steve,
Present, not voting.
okay. Megan Joy.
Yes.
You were.
Megan, sorry, I didn't get you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And Anisha Stephen not present. Okay, that passes then.
All right, thank you all. And again, Val, Steve, Ashwin, thank you all very much. Okay, final order of business is the district need statement. So did everyone receive the district needs statement that I sent out by email earlier? All yeses, great. So let's talk about it. What do people feel that, sorry, Damaris, you
I was
unmuted.
just gonna crack a joke and say the more relevant question is, did we read it?
Yes, that is, yeah.
I did not read.
Well, I guess, why don't we take,
I'm sorry.
why don't we take 2 minutes, skim it? It's in your email inboxes. All right, we'll be back in 2 minutes.
Jake,
Yeah.
can I suggest what's worked in other committees is to share the screen and kind of go down by section to see if people need to make, look at each section to see if there's anything that needs to be changed, updated, whatever.
Sure, let's do that. My skepticism is simply that I feel bad scrolling too fast or too slow.
Okay, so I just want to alert people to the key, because we've updated some of the information and some needs to wait till the end of the fiscal year.
No.
Sorry, Damaris, did I scroll too fast? All right, my bad. See, this is what I was worried about.
Jake, can you go back to the NYCHA? Yeah, that one right there, just real quick. Thank you.
If I could just add in for everybody, this is for fiscal year 25. So it would be for starting a year from this July. It's not for the coming year.
Susan, is that kind of like what they're doing in some of the other properties where they have these companies that are offering like free Wi-Fi or reduced Wi-Fi costs, or is this an initiative? I'm not familiar with that initiative. Is that just like to revamp the buildings and do free Wi-Fi?
Can we go back so I could see what it says? I think there actually are more initiatives now. I like that New York Mesh, I know is one.
Yeah, so there's a lot of, so I'm wondering if we should adjust the language to this one.
I
moving
think,
forward.
I think
Sure.
it does need to be updated, but it needs to be researched and updated.
Yeah, let's just take that up when we take up amendments or proposed
Okay.
amendments.
Sorry.
No, don't worry about it. It's not a problem for me because I'm in Alaska, but I recognize it's getting late for you guys.
Is it still daylight?
I just realized that I've been talking and been on mute. Megan, you can go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry, that was a mistake.
Oh, okay. Don't worry about it. Alistair, go ahead.
Hi, Jake. Thanks for putting this together. Jake, I have comments, some comments here and there. Should I just go through them, or do you want to go through page by page with the group? What's the best way to do this? So just tell me what I.
Yes, please. Why don't you go through them and we will take them up as you hit them.
Okay, sure. On the first page, the paragraph that starts additionally, CD3 is experiencing a crisis of street homelessness. Yeah, that paragraph there. And it's clear that new affordable housing is needed, but it must be targeted. I think, I'm not a specialist on this, but I think the homelessness issue is twofold. It's one, people can't afford housing, but you also have a mental health issues with homeless people, where just providing them houses is not the simple solution. They actually need help. Can we structure that to also include mental health services in addition to housing?
If I could speak to that,
Yes, Susan.
that's just normal supportive housing. But all of that is, well, it's being dealt, the mental health services are being dealt with in human services. But what we're talking about here, I mean, I don't think it's necessary because that's always done. That is supportive housing.
Okay, does it
And
say?
I don't
housing in
think
here?
for this committee to get into mental health services, I think we need to be more focused because the different committees deal with different agencies.
Okay, when I read it, it implies that the homelessness is purely due to a housing issue where. I
Well,
think-
even the mentally ill, everyone that deals with mentally ill homeless people still say the number one remedy is housing. Because if you're mentally ill and you're getting services on the street, you still need housing. And with the housing does come mental health services.
Okay,
It's still affordable housing. That's what the people working with the mentally ill will say. And this has come up in the last month. We say, what is the greatest need? They'll say housing.
yes, okay, as long as someone reading this understands that,
They do. I
Okay.
appreciate your point, but people working with those population do.
right, but the people reading this will not be people working with that.
That's
with that
not
population.
necessarily true. This is actually going to the agencies to talk about our unmet needs.
Okay, fine.
Wait,
green-
Alistair, I'm sorry to
Yeah.
cut you off really quickly. Susan,
Sure.
because this isn't a resolution, we don't need to like follow Robert's rules on this, right?
It's not a resolution. We're not voting on it. We want to finalize it next month, hopefully, but yes, you're correct.
Perfect. I just wanted to make sure that I didn't have to like ask Alistair about whether that was a proposed amendment or
Yeah,
how
no.
we're gonna make that work. Okay.
Correct.
No,
Yeah,
thanks.
I would
And-
also just note for what it's worth that I work with a lot of homeless people and a lot of mentally ill people. And I think oftentimes being mentally ill is a very reasonable response to being homeless. It is incredibly hard and it really shakes up how you look at the world. I think looking at mental illness as a cause of homelessness rather than homelessness as a cause of mental illness might also be a little bit backwards.
Yeah, no, I'm coming from the perspective because I house people that are mentally ill and I shouldn't be housing them. They should be in a different
Supportive housing.
in a different supportive housing because it's disruptive to the facilities and the other people in the building. And that's the angle I'm coming from. It's that I can't just house some people that have mental illness. They really need support. So
Sure.
I get that. Thank you.
All right, next point.
The green line below median household income is just 52,720. That was in 2020. Should we specify that was as of 2021?
If you read the key, all the stuff in yellow needs to be updated. The statistics need to be.
Yeah, but it's in green, Susan.
Oh, I thought you were looking at the yellow one.
No, I'm looking at the green one.
Does the footnote will say that, right?
The
when I-
footnote says 2023.
Oh, well, then it is. Then it
But I
is.
think when I clicked on that footnote, the citation was from 2021.
Well, then the footnote is wrong.
No, it could be a 2023 article that was citing 2021 data,
Gotcha.
potentially.
Got you.
So I wasn't sure if it's minor, but I just looked up the footnote and noted that.
Like, I don't have any objection to that.
I don't feel strongly one way or the other. I just wanted to point it out.
All right, next up.
Okay.
Appreciate you flagging it down there.
No, thanks. Under the section build and preserve affordable housing, the last paragraph.
Yeah.
Okay, third line from bottom, it talks about frivolous evictions. I don't think there are really frivolous evictions going on today. They might have been in the past before 2019, but I don't think, from my experience, that's happening. So I would prefer to take that out or clarify what we're trying to say there. And I would say need further down, need expanded support to
Well,
make.
hang on, but I guess. Yeah, let's just go through all your.
Yeah, it's
suggestions.
just this sentence. I just,
Yeah.
so I have an issue with the frivolous evictions and I can get into details on that if necessary. And then where we say, I think if we can amend it or change it, support to make sure tenants can either remain in their homes or be provided with more suitable housing. And that existing affordable housing is protected. So I'm saying the organizations can either ensure that the tenants stay in the home or provide them with more suitable housing. And that kind of goes back to the mental health issues.
All right, so why don't we take that one up? We don't need a formal debate, but if you got thoughts, raise your hand. Steve, I don't know if you've got your hand raised for this or general feedback, or maybe I missed you on the
Yeah,
last.
I
one,
mean,
so-
I had my hand raised partly because, earlier on when we were talking about housing, I agree with Alistair's point that we could have said affordable housing and supportive housing on page 1. There's no harm in simply adding that because it is a distinct housing type that serves special needs populations. I would like to make a separate paragraph about, I feel like it sort of gets buried in a paragraph about housing development, and then we switch over to, you talk about new affordable housing, but there's so much of the work that we have to do in this neighborhood is about just keeping people in their homes, and the role of community-based organizations is to try to do that through tenant education, organizing, and helping tenants deal with various issues. And I don't know if frivolous eviction is the right word, but I mean there are a lot of people who because there's unregulated tenants who don't have the right to a lease renewal, who get evicted because the landlord simply wants to raise their rent, or maybe didn't appreciate that they complained about some housing condition and decided, they could get a tenant who would be less likely to complain and pay more rent. So, I mean, you could call that frivolous evictions, or, just, inadequate, dealing with tenants who have inadequate tenant protections. But I feel like this should be a separate paragraph under community-based organizations in CD3. And it could even be fleshed out a bit more because a lot of this section is dealing with development, and there's a lot of work that has to be done around just preserving affordable housing and keeping people in their homes.
All right, Damaris, go ahead.
So I want to object to the idea that there are not frivolous evictions still occurring. And I understand what you're saying, Alistar, that maybe times are different, but I think this is meant to speak to in the cases where there are frivolous evictions. We want to make sure that residents have the resources and that community-based organizations have the resources to help those tenants fight that. It's not saying that every eviction is frivolous. It's just saying that in the case where there are frivolous evictions, we want to make sure the tenants are getting the services that they need. So
Okay.
I don't object to to that language. That's my take on that.
All right. Now, Susan, I'm sorry, you just said this. I've already forgotten. Do we need to finalize something today, or do we
No,
just?
no, we don't, but if you're not finalizing it, there should be, someone should be looking it up or writing up something for, to prepare like in 2 weeks so we could get ready for the next meeting.
Okay, sounds good. All right, Alistair, keep going.
Okay, just two more, and they're short. This one's more of a question. On the paragraph that says expand support for residential resiliency upgrades, I didn't quite understand where that was going. I'll try to read it. I didn't quite understand. When it says the city, can you give me examples just to understand what it means by tailor programs to the specific financial needs of low and moderate income housing providers? What are
I
some
guess I can
examples of that?
to that. There's a lot of buildings where there's infrastructure like in the basements that the tenants or that the HDFCs could try to elevate so that it's out of harm's way in the event of flooding, but they just simply don't have the capital reserves to be able to like move electrical circuit panels from the basement up to like the first floor, which some buildings do that. I mean, there are buildings that move the boiler from the basement to the roof. So these are costly items. There's some low-hanging fruit that buildings can do, which we try to encourage them to do, but they don't always do it. But
would it be low and moderate income housing providers, or would it be the old buildings that were built a long time ago? Because I know like the old tenement buildings have all the electrical service in the basement below the water line, etc. Is it just the low income? Is it all low and moderate income housing providers, or is it just old buildings in general, Steve?
Well, it is. I mean, when you're talking about city tailoring programs where there may be subsidies involved, they're going to have to be, they will tailor them for income eligibility. So that's why, I mean, a market rate co-op or condo or whatever in the neighborhood could afford, hopefully, or do an assessment of their shareholders or the owners to like take care of a specific need, or take out another, second mortgage or something.
Okay.
This is just something that for low-income co-ops, you just don't have that capacity. So.
Got it. Okay, thanks. And my last comment is on the NYCHA Section 8 housing, where we talk about 40 billion of capital and repair needs over the next 5 years. That translates to $224,000 per apartment, which I think is quite striking, and maybe sends a stronger signal. Again, I don't feel, I'm not strongly opinionated on it, but if that helps in bringing attention to it, that would be useful.
Okay, thank you.
And that's it. Thank you.
Got it. Steve, his hand is down. However, before we move on, I believe that I recently learned that Cooper Square CLT actually owns the land under 23 buildings.
All right. Yeah, I missed that. Okay.
Thank you to Val for pointing that out. All right, Damaris, go ahead.
Steve also had the to put in the, where Alistair was talking about, is to put in affordable and supportive housing, which would work.
Yes, I agree with that, and I think that's a good idea. Affordable, permission on track changes, and supportive housing. Does anyone object to that? I would hope not. Cool. Thank you, Alistair. Thank you, Steve, for that suggestion.
Thank you.
Damaris, go ahead.
Can we just go back to the end where the last part?
The digital.
Was that it? Oh my God, I'm losing my mind. Not that part where Alistair was talking about the end. You know what? Let's move on, because I can't remember where it is that I wanted to make a suggestion, so I don't want to take up any time.
Okay. Who else has feedback? Nobody? That's fine. I think we did a pretty good job last year.
Can I just ask, particularly
Please.
to Damaris, I guess, this section on NYCHA, in light of, all the changes going on now, does this need updating for the PACT and all the other programs?
You're muted, Damaris.
I mean, there have been a lot of changes since this was created last year. For example, the trust has passed, and now there is a voting requirement, and people are challenging that. There's also like a big push to ask for additional funding. So there's a lot of things I'm not sure what to include and what to change. So I would recommend updating wherever, we need to make those updates. And if we're going to, I think that language is fine. It's really just encouraging people, the city to support us in, engaging residents as thoroughly as possible, right? And that's the only thing I think that this community board can suggest, and for the NYCHA RAD and public housing trust stuff.
Okay,
There's
I
not
just
much
feel
else that we
better.
can say about that,
Yeah, no, I just feel better just that it's been considered and decided.
Yes, I agree. But can we go to but the connectivity issue though? I think that needs a little bit of work, and I'm not prepared to say what, but I feel like what I've seen in the neighborhood, for example, and throughout the city, is these other providers that are coming in and in some cases working to give discounts to residents. And so I think we want to encourage that there's a bridge, but I'm just wondering if we want to actually name anybody.
Well, this is about our unmet needs, so I don't know that we would want to talk about specific providers.
No, because I'm sorry. I just say that because we say the Big Apple Connect initiative.
Oh.
So I don't know if in that they also name providers. That's all I'm saying. We can talk about it offline. I'm just highlighting that I think that's an area where you might want to do a little bit of upgrading and some and changes. That's it.
So Jay, could you just put a comment there to check for, that this should be checked for updates?
Yeah, that's it.
And basically, we need to look at
And the cost too, the cost stuff too, might not be as specifically the same for each provider.
Yeah, we probably don't even need that detail.
Yeah, that seems superfluous to me.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe we just want to take out that detail.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. That's all I have really for it right now. Thank you.
Track changes. Okay. So I guess if people don't have other comments, the only thing that is kind of outstanding here is what we want to do with this block of text right here, the highlighted. We heard suggestion from Steve that it be broken out into its new paragraph and maybe be fleshed out a little bit. Alistair wants to do away with the frivolous evictions and maybe add something to the effect of make sure tenants can remain in their homes or be provided with other suitable housing. Steve, Alistair, do you think that you could come to the July meeting with a concrete proposal for us to yes or no?
Yeah, I mean, maybe unwarranted evictions, there are many tenants who get threatening legal notices who sometimes they just move out because they get scared and they don't know their rights. It's self-evicting and it's very common. And then you get people, so I don't know if you want to call it frivolous, but the landlord met their goal of getting that person out simply by sending them threatening letters that they didn't understand. So
perhaps the term evictions is not the right term, because I think evictions implies that the court was involved and the court evicted the tenant. If I'm correct, I might be wrong. At least that's my.
As a matter of legal practice, a self-help eviction is one where eviction is just losing your property interest in the dwelling. And so you can be evicted without the court actually going through the unlawful detainer process.
Isn't the good cause of the legislation they've been trying to pass, isn't that dealing with these kinds of evictions, whether they're called frivolous?
That's just one class of evictions. I mean, landlords who don't renew leases for people.
Oh, that's just for not renewing.
Yeah, I mean, a rent stabilized tenant has the right to a lease renewal. Not all rent stabilized tenants know that. And there are people who simply, English is not their first language, and they see notices and they get served with papers, and then they just think I better move out,
I guess the angle I'm coming from, sorry, Steve, the angle I'm coming from is I've been in housing court a lot, unfortunately, and it's not easy at all in the current environment to bring a case against a tenant and have them evicted, even when they're being bad actors. And I've got lots of examples of that. And that's, so if it's an eviction that's dealt in court, the tenants if they get there, the tenant seems pretty well protected. And from my opinion, in my experience, what you're saying is that the tenant has a presumption that they're going to be evicted, so they move out, which is, I don't know, in my mind, that's
I guess maybe instead of saying evictions, you could say frivolous dispossessed notices and holdovers, which doesn't mean the person's evicted, but that they are served, tenants are served with papers, and sometimes it's perfectly valid reasons why they're served with this papers. Sometimes it's just to try to wear people down, where they're like, I'm tired of fighting for my home, and so they're so
I think that's a better description of that, Steve.
Okay.
Oops. So what do folks think about frivolous, what was it, dispossessed notices?
And holdovers?
And holdovers?
I mean, I don't understand what's the objection to evictions. I mean, I'm really confused here.
I agree. I think it's unlikely that we are going to have the word evictions be misread by a city agency, which is the target of this document, as being something other than people just not getting to stay in their homes. You know, we're not, this is not a policy paper that we're sending out to the general public. This is going to people who read these for a living. So I'm inclined to keep evictions, but, you know, open to the will of the committee.
Could I also say, I mean, there's a real problem right now with not having enough legal representation. And it's a fact the city does have stats that low-income residents who don't have legal representation are much more likely to be evicted. If they do have legal representation, they're much less legally, likely to be evicted. So I think that is showing that people are being evicted who should not necessarily be evicted.
Yeah.
And that's a very current problem.
Yeah, I mean, in zip codes that have right to counsel, it's limited right now to certain zip codes. But when it went into after it went into effect, evictions dropped in some zip codes by 30-40% or more.
Yeah.
I don't remember the exact numbers, but there was zip codes in the Bronx and the neighborhoods that had the highest eviction rates saw a huge drop in evictions.
So,
I mean, can I ask a question? I mean, do we have to debate on this issue? Like, we have to vote on it? Like, I mean, Alistair,
will be voting.
where you're entitled to your opinion, and I respect that, and I hear you. And I think some of us are saying other things, and so clearly we're not all on the same, page. But I'm not sure that this topic is, we're debating the term eviction in a community that has historically experienced, eviction at an alarming rate. I don't really know why we're spending this time talking about this in this way. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be so abrupt, but
how about avoidable eviction? They are avoidable if people knew their rights and were.
Yeah, I'm fine. Listen, I brought it up just as a point. I don't mean to be contentious here or take out people's time. So I'm easy with it. I don't.
Look, here's what I'm gonna do, because it's getting late. I recognize for everyone who is actually in CD3. And so we don't need to take this one up tonight. We will vote on this next meeting. Right?
We're not actually voting at the next meeting. We want to finalize it. We're going to vote on everything together in October with the budget priorities. But right now, I'm going to say right now, I have nothing else for land use next month, which is July. And do you want to be meeting just for this sentence?
How about this, Susan? That's a great point. How about we do this? I'm just going to make the amendment. I will hear motions to overrule the chair on changing frivolous to avoidable, and otherwise we will consider this to be wrapped up, and then we can skip a July meeting. How does that sound?
Great. That sounds good. And we can still offline update certain sections, and then that will be voted on in October.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
Great. So with that, I think that we can call this a wrap. Susan, I'll send this to you, although we don't have all that much.
Are you gonna vote on that section or no?
Vote on the
you just changed it. You made the
yeah,
change.
I just changed it.
Okay. Yeah, just send it. Yeah, if you'll just send it to me, that'll be
I'll
great.
just send it to you. All right. I think that calls it on our agenda tonight. So thank you all for staying late. I know that this went pretty long. It was a long meeting. I just want to say very briefly, this is my last meeting as chair. This is my last meeting on CB3. I have been priced out of CD3. And look, it's why I got on to this committee. It's why I joined the board, because it's that important, and it's going to be a sad day when the people who care about this community can't afford to stay here. So thank you all for letting me be chair. It's been a pleasure working with y'all, and maybe I'll see you again in whichever Queens community district I'm in. Not sure yet. All right. Take care, everyone. Have a good night.
Roll call.
Yeah.
Oh, roll call. That's right. All right.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you
right.
for your service, Jake, okay?
That's kind
Yeah.
of you.
I second thank you.
Andrea, could you call roll call? I've lost
Yes.
the minutes.
Yeah, I got it. Jake Gold,
Yes.
Damaris Reyes,
Yes.
Ariadna Chua. We didn't lose Ariadna, she was just here. Alistair Economakis,
Yes, and thank you, Jake, for being chair, and we will miss you.
Andrea Gordillo, yes, and yes, we will miss you, Jake. Come back and visit. Herman Hewitt,
Here.
Trevor Holland. Okay.
He's- He unmuted for a second, but he didn't say anything.
Yeah, register that as a yes, I think.
Okay.
I'm on my phone. I don't.
Laura Lugo, absent. Sandra Strother. Dominic Berg. Steve Herrick,
Yes.
Megan Joy,
Yes.
Anisha Steven. And
All right.
Ariana is gone still. Okay, all right, with
All
that,
right,
I'm adjourned.
that's a wrap. Thanks, y'all. Take care.
Thank
Thank
you. Bye.